It was late at night in that June 2015 E3 press conference. Rumors had been swirling. Are they actually doing it? Are they remaking this widely beloved game that everyone's been asking since all the way back at Sony's E3 2005 conference? The logo said it. The promise has been made. Final Fantasy VII Remake is real. And then 5 years later, and many cahoots after, we got the news. It's not just coming back, it's going to be a trilogy. And now here we are to talk about the second part of said trilogy for such a beloved game that no one will stop loving or talking about, to the chagrin of many, but it is widely beloved for a reason. Welcome to this week's episode of The X Button, Season 4, Episode 11, aka the first review / spoilercast of the year, where we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, from both review and spoilers. I am your host, Alejandro, with me is the child of Jenova.
Paul, hey everybody, I love collecting materia.
Yeah. So Paul, here we are now, like, after all this time, like, here it is, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Like, we played it, we beat it. You beat it earlier than me this time because you mainlined it. I actually did a 100% completion run for it, where I literally did everything before diving into stuff, and we have finally beaten it, and now we can go full on spoilers about why we just played. Me, just more recently, though. Yeah. But not yet.
You can't, if you have not played the game, don't worry. All of the good stuff is so late that we could talk about most of this game and not actually go into spoilers. So fear not, we will warn you when that happens.
Exactly. So yeah, don't worry. And then there's also a certain irony that the way that this game is segmented, it's kind of easier to separate that conversation, so we don't have to immediately jump into that. But yeah, my clock right now is at 148 hours because I kept playing it because I'm still doing a bunch of mini games. Like, what was your hour count, Paul?
Oh man, I should have counted that beforehand, but it's easily at like 70, 60 to 70 hours right now.
Yeah, so basically makes sense as someone that then like you just push through, and then someone that did it almost all entirety. All those like reports that this could be like a 150 to 200 hour platinum were no joke, I tell you. They were absolutely no jokes. It's like, this game is massive. In fact, it's even more massive than I even anticipated. Like, the more that you kept like playing it, the more areas you kept opening, vehicles that allow you to like traverse certain areas that keep getting unlocked, the sheer variety of like the different biomes and all that is like it was pretty impressive seeing, especially thinking Remake came out that's the thing, Remake came out 3 years ago. The anniversary is in like a month for Remake, so for it to be like 4 years, they were able to do this game on top of they did DLC and the PS5 version of that first part for Remake, and they were able to do all of this size, this long a game in basically 3 years, close to 4. And then when you see like most of this game also really worked from like a really technical and like design, like from a design angle, that's kind of an achievement, like in modern day gaming, when you really think about it.
What you can do when you have a real plan and like an actual goal. You know exactly what you want to do. There's unification on the highest level, and everything else is just about execution or addition. Yeah,
and the things that obviously they had a template. They had the original game. This is it. Basically, at its core, it's a remake, reinterpretation of like that original game. So basically, they already knew what towns were where. Like, they had kind of like some idea of what to do. But if you also go look back at images of that old game, it was like a lot of what they had to build was also from scratch, because a lot of that game was also barren wasteland that you had to like figure out in your mind to kind of like picture what they were trying to convey with those games, especially with that original game. So even that, like, even with them having like some sort of design dog what they were able to do, and at the level of polish that they were able to do, is something that I have to like really applaud them for, because it's like, we hear big games take 6-7 years to make. If they had told me this game took 7 years, I would believe them. The fact that it's less is like, that's even more impressive, and also gives me hope that we don't have to wait long for like the next part, because God, I want it. I need that other part like so, like I need it now so bad, and we're definitely gonna talk about why. But yeah, just kind of like just to give an example of how we're gonna do this, we're gonna have like more general thoughts about what we thought about the story, some elements of gameplay, systems, minigames, and all that, and then we're gonna leave all full on like really big spoiler discussion like in the second half of the of the episode, kind of like how we did the Final Fantasy 16 spoiler cast. Something like how we did Spider-Man, that we started with spoilers like from the get-go, but because we were on a time crunch. But we'll try to not go too long, because also there's not much time. Like you'll see, it's like
when you really break it down,
there's not much. Yeah, despite this also having a lot. But yeah, overall, Paul, like high-level thoughts. What do you think of Rebirth, and what would you give it as a personal score? Like, take it away.
All right, so it's definitely going to be a 9 at least. I'm going to work it out. And there's certain parts of it that I know it's not a 10. I am going to give it something lower than you did on your preliminary stuff, at least. If I'm allowed to do in betweens,
yes,
I'm going to do like a 9.3.
Yeah. That sounds about right. Which you know why? Because it's a 93 Metacritic.
Oh, I did not know that going into this. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it's still the highest rated game this year so far.
Do you want me to go into any details about?
Go. Yeah,
why?
As long as
okay.
Yeah.
So, the reasoning, I'll kind of keep it to that to keep it focused at least, is on the one hand, the game itself looks and feels fantastic. It's never been better for any of these characters. We have truly surpassed what they looked like during the Advent Children era, where we thought, man, I hope games can one day look like this.
Which, by the way, have you seen that they've been circulating the Tifa fight in the church? I saw it. I was like, holy crap, we really come forward from that. And that used to be
which is funny. They interpolated that to 60 frames per second because it did not look like that at first when I watched it. So it actually looks better than what it did when I initially saw it. And you saw it, of course, because you got it once thinking it was a complete edition and it was not, and then you had to watch it again as the complete version.
Yeah, I got to see both versions.
Yeah, well, it almost makes it better for a comparison standpoint to see with fresh eyes exactly the differences.
In a way, like, it was so weird because I felt about it the same way as when I saw Batman vs Superman the first time, theatrical versus Ultimate Edition. That's how that felt, because it was just 30 extra minutes, but the 30 extra minutes just add so much. In case of Advent Children, it went from like a complete like eye candy nonsense to something that at least had some coherence. It's still nonsensical because it's Tetsuya Nomura that was directing that movie, and you could feel the edge just like scream on the screen. There was so much leather, so much black leather in that movie.
Yeah,
so.
Every character got replaced from their original color palette to black leather across the board. That was just that kind of time. But anyway, let me try to rein myself in here. Yeah. So, we've gotten to that point where games are now surpassing the Advent Children days. Everything looks better than it could have possibly ever been imagined. It's so colorful. It's so wacky. They've got the tone nailed for a lot of what that adventure was, which everyone kind of made it into this weird edge fest, especially after Advent Children really took things over. Yeah. But it really was just a silly situation for everybody. Everyone's got this equal trauma going on, but at the same time, you get these weird little situations where you had a mini game for CPR and you did the dolphin thing and all this other weird stuff that was going on, and Rebirth completely nails all of that. Yeah. And of course that extends as well to the action. Every character feels completely unique. They feel completely usable. There's no character that is completely wasted or like, I'm immediately removing this character from my category. That was not the case in Remake, I would say. So that is an improvement for me. And how many choices there are, how often they give you just like, now that they had like 6 characters at the highest point, they could easily just split you up in big story moments, and it's all right, 3 and 3, and it always rotated on who was in which party. So there was always a crazy dynamic going on between all of them. Every character has a unique dynamic that is consistent and that is so entertaining to watch play out. Calling out Barret and Yuffie's weird dynamic of like, I hate you, but you're such a like, we're ride or die, gonna fight each other for each other.
And Yuffie defends Barret in that scene. Yeah, remember? And the he was like, yes,
exactly. It's like kind of it's that rivalry of like, oh, this is so silly and very like father-daughter-ish kind of feel to them. And then you've got like the weird love triangle between Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith, obviously. And then you've got even the characters that aren't playable for this one, with Vincent and Sid being in the game very short. Obviously, that was very much advertised. It's not like a surprise or anything. But the fact that even them, for such a short amount of time and a short amount of lines, have so much character depth to each of them has me so excited. And to kind of wrap it all up, after this one, I am finally truly excited for what they have for the next one. Remake had me at a certain level of that, but this is like far more on that.
And let's just not like mince words for people I kind of like hear beforehand. Like Paul was not as excited for this game coming out as I was, but also because like Paul really loved Midgar, and from what I've been like reading online and seeing some of the reactions as people are still early on in this game, a lot of people are in your camp that the Midgar section is like such a complete beginning, middle, and like packed chapter that then kind of like what comes after is like takes a little bit before like it ramps up for like the story moments that people really think about when they think about this game. And the thing is that a lot of those story moments happen at the end of here, while a lot of this part in the original game was about like really learning about Gaia, the world. It was about you like exploring the different towns and seeing like the way Shinra affected every different town, either in small ways or big ways. The mini stories about those specific towns, as kind of like your team starts to like get to know each other better, start learning their quirks, getting more team members joining in the adventure before like the big climatic things happen. This was a moment like, especially like if you didn't experience it back in 1997, like in your example, Paul, like do you play a Final Fantasy game before 7? Like before you came back? Like, or was it just Kingdom Hearts? How you knew about Cloud, Sephiroth, and all of them?
Oh, we're talking about like first experience?
Yeah, the first experience of 7.
No, Kingdom Hearts 1 was the first time I'd ever seen it. So I see Cloud walk in and I go, who the heck is this guy? Why does he look so cool? But like I knew that like Aerith, Leon, and Yuffie were from something else because they clearly looked very different and felt very different. Yeah. And then one of my buddies was like, oh, they're from the game called Final Fantasy. I was like, what the heck is that? And then it wasn't until way later that I played 7 on my PS2
through backwards compatibility.
How far removed I was from that, and then I played 10, and that was it until 13.
Yeah, and in that case, like the after Midgar section for so many people in 1997 was like a holy crap moment. We thought all this game was just gonna be Midgar, how packed with content that thing was, even though it was just like 5 or 6 hours of you being in Midgar. So much happens in that little in that little section. But then like the idea was like they had that and also an entire world outside, and that was like back in 1997. That was kind of like a big mind-blowing moment. That's why you saw a lot of people being like so gobsmacked just by the fact of them entering the Grasslands, even though that's technically the worst part of the game, like at least from like the biomes that come after, because it's like it's just a Grasslands, but it was that kind of that idea of like there is a grand adventure ahead of me besides all of that. But you didn't get that. You came to it afterwards, so you didn't have kind of like that magical moment because you've already seen what games had become after that, so you were not excited for this part as much, especially because you never really finished Final Fantasy VII either. So it's like so you have like a very interesting relationship with this subsection of the series, because your love is Crisis Core, and then you see it more realized. Some of these worlds, they're in Crisis Core than in the original one. So that's why it was different for you to experience that compared to like me, that I got to play through the entire game and I'm able to kind of like teleport myself and read around like what people actually really thought about certain things. So anything else you want to say about in your
about like the reasoning for rating it, at least? I think anything else would be specifically in like different categories.
Yeah, for me it was like with 148 hours that I played this is definitely one of the best open world games that I played in the last few years. That similar to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, that I also put 140 hours like in that small amount of time. I just found myself really mesmerized by the world, mesmerized by the tiny stories, like the charm of everything, the stupidity of so many of the scenes, like getting, especially with a certain like race of creatures that everyone is kind of like up in arms with because of their really scary teeth, how that thing ends in the most stupid way. Talking about the Koopas, obviously, and just like seeing some of the silliness that remake, like for example, the Midgard section has a couple silly moments, especially in the middle of that story, but it's usually a very serious, like, we're a terrorist cell, like destroying like this corporation that's like destroying the planet and all that, and a lot of that silliness came afterwards. And kind of like you, I was very surprised that so much of it leaned into the silliness of that original game more than Advent Children. Advent Children, and on top of that, Dirge of Cerberus, and a little bit of Crisis Core, with characters like Angel and Genesis, kind of like added some edginess into the property that was not there initially. And because that was the modern way to see Final Fantasy VII for many people, on top of seeing edgy representations of those characters also in Kingdom Hearts, because Cloud and Sephiroth are complete edgelords in Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. Only Zack, who was in Birth by Sleep, kind of like came in like completely unchanged. He was still kind of like his happy-go-lucky dude.
Yeah.
But it's like Rebirth has allowed finally audiences to experience the silliness that was always in that original game that many people may have already forgotten because Final Fantasy VII is so defined by the big moments when people think about it, because they are historic moments. We know, especially the legendary spoiler that is like the gaming medium's version of a specific Star Wars spoiler. We all know what it is. I'm glad that now we have a high fidelity version that reminds people that no, what made Final Fantasy VII special on top of the Midgard section was just how irreverently silly it could also be, because it's like putting a lot of these characters that in their own have their own trauma, they're very serious, but they also put them in the most stupid situations that you're like, how is this real? And why does this work? And why does this make these characters just that much more charming? And I also have to add that why they feel more charming is because the writing in this game is so excellent. The performances of almost everyone from this cast is so excellent. Like, after Rebirth, I think like it's gonna be very hard for people to argue that the Final Fantasy VII cast is not the best cast of characters of like any Final Fantasy game. Like, kind of like why they were always so beloved. I feel like the writing that Rebirth did has elevated that more for me to love them even more. That they're kind of like my de facto favorites. And I played 2 other Final Fantasy games that I think like overall still are better games, which are 4 and 6. Those cast of characters were also beloved. Cecile, like Rosa, and Kain in 4, like Palom and Paran, the two kids that sacrificed themselves. Tella, Tella that dies by summoning meteor to help you. It's like and like everything that happened in Final Fantasy IV, like with that non-stop tragedy that then they eventually walk back. But then the cast of characters of Final Fantasy VI, which is so extensive, but it's like the polar opposite of Final Fantasy VII in that they are cartoon characters put in a deadly situation against a very deadly villain. And this is kind of like the opposite. These are very serious characters put in a lot of silliness, and that's why those 2 games that stand out so much in the Final Fantasy pantheon. And that helped me endure me much, especially because a lot of this game, when we really break it down, not much happens. Because back in the day, not much happened here either. Like, Rebirth covers the rest of this one. Just for people to like have an idea, if you played the original Final Fantasy VII, it's like back in PS1, it was divided into 3 discs. The Midgard section was the first 5-6 hours, and then the rest of that disc 1 is this game. And that was also a part where, at least from a plot perspective, plot took a backseat, because you were learning about the world. It was about the mini stories. It was about the characters. And then when you learn about all that, the plot kicked into overdrive near the end of that disc to then deliver the moment that everyone knows about that ends disc 1, moving into disc 2. That is basically this game. Now, obviously, that was just like a 10-hour chunk of that game. This was blown up into like something that can take you 100 to 150 hours, depending on how much you like engage in that stuff. Unlike in Remake, where they really blew up the 5-hour section into a 35-hour thing, where they really added a lot of story, like the backstory with Jesse, going through the sewers, all the different characters and all that. The Midgard section was something that had more of a beginning, middle, and end, that I felt gave them more leeway to see how they could expand upon it. Obviously, also because they needed a big game to sell. Also, because they were not gonna get away with like a 5 or 6 hour thing, like in the end. So that's where a lot of that game's bloat kind of comes in. But here is different. Kind of like, I don't feel this game got as bloated as I thought they could, especially compared to like Remake was. but it's also because there was like a more wider canvas, but there's also less of a beginning, middle, and end, because this was not supposed to be also a beginning, middle, and end. This was the beginning that was gonna like propel you for the rest of that story in this 2 and 3. So in a way, do you know what it reminds me of, Paul? Dune Part 1. Rebirth, like from a plot perspective and kind of where it ends and all that, it's kind of like a Dune Part 1, because if you look back at that movie, that was not supposed to be a movie. Like Dune Part 1 shouldn't have just been a movie. That was like half a book. That's kind of like what we got here. And
pulled it out somehow. It's funny you say that, because I just rewatched Dune 1 today.
That's so
I put
funny.
it on in the background while I was working.
It's so good. It's so good, right? Especially now with
actually really good.
Yeah, especially with the context. Yeah, with the context.
Because everything ties back together, and just I love the differences, how long it takes them to get to Arrakis. But it's like you said, just how Remake really pulled what it could, but like the fact that it was limited by you can't go outside of Midgar, and there's nothing in Midgar besides what you were already shown that's worth showing. So then it becomes this big like, oh well, what are you gonna do? I guess Aerith's gonna ask you to go help the people of the slums, and like somebody described Midgar as just one giant dumpster that you keep running through, and it just, especially
really
at most of those points, it really looks like it, because after a while you've seen all of what the bottom of Midgar looks like, and the worst part is because that's like lore required, you can't have variation, because the whole point of Midgar is that it's a crap hole. And it's great on the upper portion, but the point is also that you don't spend a lot of time on the upper portion because you don't belong there. So anyway, it's just kind of an unwinnable situation in a lot of ways. Unless you really branch out from stuff, you couldn't do much. Here, while there's still a lot of no plot happening, it doesn't feel like it's bloated the way Remake did. Because like you said, there's a wider area that you can do. I mean, especially once you get the certain vehicles that allow you to really traverse the world, you feel like you just had this massive tutorial space that you could just go see. Like suddenly you get the Wind Waker right at the end of the main game. And like I went back and went over that stuff, and I was like, oh, so they just put Assassin's Creed Black Flag in here right at the end of the game.
In chapter 12. End of chapter 12.
And that just felt so weird to like have this, but by that point you're able to leave, but you kind of want to go do all this, and it's like, hey, what if I go find this pirate's treasure? Whoop-de-doo. And continually all of the characters' interactions just stay amazing, and they never really drop off. Even I think of this one moment when you could play as Yuffie, Barret, and one other character that I'm blanking out on, and they're going through that mining area. Maybe I thought it was before that, but anyway, they're going through that whole mining zone right when you first get the grappling hook, and you only play as Yuffie as the main character.
Yuffie, Barret, Tifa. Yuffie, Barret, Tifa. When you're in Mount Corel.
Right, that's exactly it. So it didn't get tiring because the dynamic was different suddenly. Cloud was no longer in the picture, and as I've realized, Cloud is probably one of the least interesting characters in the whole thing.
Right now.
You kind of get him.
Right now. Especially where he currently is,
Let me clarify. He's the least interesting because his whole deal is one gimmick that continually comes up and gets retread constantly. Yes, like when things move forward with him, it's great, but I feel like there's more variety in the different traumas in the way that like everyone else is allowed to move forward in their storyline and their own personal journeys, but Cloud has to stay the same because he's the main character, and he can only change when the big things happen. And we'll talk later on about why they might have fumbled that specific aspect of it. But besides that, I really appreciate how much they've leaned into the dynamic attitudes of everybody and how good it feels to just move around this world with all of them.
And they need it because, kind of like we said, it's like, plot-wise, what's the plot, Paul? What is the inciting event? What is the plot of this game?
It almost makes me, this is going to sound weird, but it almost makes you wish that your crew in Final Fantasy 15 was allowed to be more than just 4. Because the dynamics of that was already solid, and I just think if you had like a really sporty bus or something to fit 7 to 8 characters instead, because when you're allowed to sit with all of these characters for so long, you can really take the time to get to know each and every one of them. And my goodness, do I love the idea that you tie the story of the side missions to one of the companions. And I don't know if you want to just jump right into
immediately.
What you feel about that.
Yes, with that one, it's like how like even the most benign side missions like can really like get you to learn a lot about the characters. Like early on, the Salmon side quest we talked about before, like with that freaking dog and that super amazing song when you're like guiding him, you're protecting the dog, and in the middle of that protection, that's kind of like where you learn, kind of like Cloud's tick of why is he always charging $2,000 for every job that he takes, like Barret's parenthood, and kind of like what his feelings are about like a daughter that may grow up and not be like that sweet little girl that he loves so much all the like all the time. Like it isn't just in those tiny moments that you're like, wow, it's like even in what is like ostensibly an escort mission, is like you get all of that. And how improved side quests in this game are compared to Final Fantasy 16, that a lot of those side quests were so fetching in nature that in comparison to this one, is like I could kind of like maybe in one hand out of many side quests they did that would even count to, that could even be considered like fetchy. It's like there's so much like battle.
It's about 4 of them because those are all the ones that I have not completed.
Exactly, yeah. So, and that tells you a lot compared to like what the ratio was back in 16, where that was like that was such a problem. How like this follows the Witcher 3 rule of side quests, that is like story here, there's even more story here, and it kind of like builds together, even opening new areas, kind of like even that Solomon section side quest in Junon. That's what opens the other town at the other side. Like you don't do that, you don't open that the world. So it's like everything feels so interconnected, and because it has the characters that's kind of like the center of some of those side quests, that's why you feel more endeared to them. And also because you kind of have to, because they're the ones that are carrying the brunt of a lot of this section that is very, we have to follow these hooded guys. Okay, we're here now. Where are the hooded guys? Oh, they're there. Okay, I'm trying to follow these hooded guys. And here's what's so funny. They added that to give some motivation to why you're going to the different towns. That was not in the main game, in the original game. Do you know when the hooded guys appeared for the first time in the original game, Paul?
Like way late.
Nibelheim. That was the first time you saw them, because then when you go into like the different towns, that's when you find the hooded guys. You're like, what the heck are these hooded guys? So that was the first time that they got introduced, but they got put here as kind of like them trying to fill up some way of like the main thread of the story, at least having a follow through, kind of like giving them a motivation, even though like the motivation is like so slim. But by having such a slim main story like this, in this early section, how much like, you know what it reminds me of? It feels like a long season of TV where you get like specific episodes that are centered on one character. It feels very episodic sometimes. Like, kind of like, okay, we're now in the section that is gonna build up Yuffie. Now we're in the section that's gonna build up Barret. Now we're in the section that's gonna build up both Aerith and Tifa. Now it feels like the story allows itself to segment itself that way before everything kicks into overdrive, like in chapter 9 onwards, which is where you're like, okay, now we see kind of like what kind of like the point here is, and that's what we're gonna talk definitely later on. But in any other game, if it was the same, if it was the same like this, the plot was like so thin, and the writing wasn't as strong, or the characters as beloved, people would have been way harsher in this game, or this game would not have been as good as it is. You know what game it reminds me of the most? Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect, like Mass Effect 2, the skimpiest story of that entire trilogy. Barely anything happens in that game, because it's about, oh, who are the collectors? Oh, the collectors are like kidnapping humans and taking them to their base. We gotta go on a suicide mission to go like destroy these collectors. What do you do in the rest of that game, Paul? If you remember Mass Effect 2.
Wait, how it ended?
No, like what do you do in that game? Like, what is the main brunt? Yeah,
that's the whole point.
Yeah, and so in that game you're recruiting people, you're getting to know them, you like earn their loyalty and things like that. Sounds familiar.
It's funny that if you reframe it from that perspective, everyone was totally okay with Mass Effect 2.
Everyone says Mass Effect 2 is the best one. A lot of people think that.
Which is funny, because there's like a couple of people recently that have started going for some revisionism and being like, Mass Effect 2 sucked. Freaking Sebastian over here hating on Mass Effect and its multiplayer in Mass Effect 3.
3, yeah.
I was like, is he kidding me? Because Mass Effect 3's multiplayer was amazing.
Oh yes, it was shockingly
Anyway.
good considering it was tacked on. But yeah,
I'm gonna get myself into another rabbit hole. So anyway, what were we talking about?
no,
Mass
yeah,
Effect 2.
Mass Effect 2. Like a lot of that game was about relationship building because you're like a main story, nothing happens, but it's kind of something that we were having a discussion before like we started recording. It's like it's really interesting how insular a lot of middle chapters in so many beloved trilogies tends to be. Like we're talking about Empire Strikes Back, my favorite Star Wars movie, like the one that I have the most memory. Like, what happens in Empire Strikes Back?
Not a
whole lot. Exactly. It's like the rebels get the crap kicked out of them. They go on the run. Han and Leia and Chewie and C-3PO are being like pursued literally all the time until they arrive to Bespin to another to another trap. Luke is like learning to train, like learning about like his connection to the Force and all that, and maybe his connection to his father that then is revealed at the end of that. Is like, what is all that? Very insular, very character driven storytelling, and nowadays people call that the best Star Wars movie. So it's like it's so funny, like then seeing in Rebirth how like also not a lot happens, but because it's propped up by how well character dynamics are, how well the writing is, like how great each character is, like in their individual stories, kind of like them overcoming some traumas, even like especially with Barret, end of chapter 8 with Dine. Like that was kind of like the first moment that really hit me emotionally for that game, kind of like how well performed that entire sequence is. They also kind of like had to tweak some stuff because Dine dies in a different way in the original game. He just literally falls, like he drops off a cliff, like commits suicide. In this one, like in this game, he actually stands for Barret, like takes suicide, basically like does a suicide run against the Shinra army that's coming at them. That reminded me a lot of what game, Paul?
Crisis Core.
Yeah. It was like it was such a Crisis Core moment.
You know,
like
I almost wonder if it takes a little bit away from the fact that they basically recreated Crisis Core's ending with that, almost making it like just a retread of that. It was powerful, but I wonder if some of my emotion from it is like, oh no, this is what happened to Zach.
I look at it as the George Lucas way. What does he always say? It's poetry, it rhymes. So it's like, and then when you think about it that way, it's like those kind of like parallels can help.
It does always also make sense. I think you and I talked about it briefly that Barret is so similar to Cloud in so many ways that like just a couple of changes here and there for each of them, and things would be very similar. Like each of them, either of them could have played the opposite role in each other's lives. And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the massive respect that they grow for each other after that sequence. Also, there's like it was just the tiny growth that started like being seeped through back in Remake, and seeing it kind of like all sprout here. Is like so good, and even like something like Tifa and Aerith's friendship was like that was never pronounced in the original one. It was kind of like implying that they liked each other as friends, but they never had like a moment for them to interact like we see here. That it's like they have moments where you see them all together, like just talking about life, or kind of like also. I love that scene over at Gungaga. You know which one? When Aerith goes to see Zack's parents.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you talk with Aerith outside, and then she started mentioning like he's missing Zack and all that because he doesn't know like what happened, and then Cloud is like obviously because his mind's completely cooked right now. He forgot that Zack was his friend that saved him back in Crisis Core before he had that meltdown that gave him his memories.
No spoilers for Final Fantasy VII, but this is a prequel, so it
yes,
doesn't count.
Exactly, yes, that's prequel. Like, that would have known. We're still not talking like full spoiler, but that moment that Sax is like, nah, if he's not here, he doesn't care about it. He's a jerk. Like you should, like, he's probably dead. And then like there's this scene where like both Aerith and Tifa, because Tifa kind of joins in, look at each other and they look back at him like angry, and it was so funny, and that stuff Cloud in his tracks before kind of like he started having like his mental breakdowns that keeps happening to him throughout the entire game. That's kind of like his shtick, like his whole mental instability. But it
is interesting to see some growth in that as well. I was really worried that we were going to not get any closure out of that, especially after that early stage where Tifa actually confronts Cloud, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
She's like,
early in the game.
Sure about that? Yeah, that's what I mean. Like back in Calm, like first couple chapters. But when it didn't really go anywhere, I was like, oh man, I really hope that they're gonna like actually give us some movement on that.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it took them like another 7 to 8 chapters, but they finally started addressing it.
Yes, and also the conversations you can have with Tifa if you find her, if you're doing like the social links, because it's like when they have that fight early on and in Calm, which is kind of like it's one quirk that this game adds, which is probably kind of like as part of this being like both a remake but also pseudo meta sequel of the original, that it's like that original game still happened and we're kind of seeing like an alternate reality / rebuild of Evangelion. We're going through the same stuff before we're deviating, that we get the Sephiroth, how he keeps appearing in this game, which by the way, like he appears less in this game than in the last one, which is so funny. Yeah, but it's like every time Sephiroth appeared, like he had impact every time that he was showing up. In this time we had that wrinkle of like, is this the real Tifa? He starts like putting those seeds of doubt in Cloud to kind of like break that relationship, because he knows like if you go back to the original Final Fantasy VII, it's like Tifa is very pivotal to something that happens to Cloud later in that game that we might see in the third game. We're gonna talk about in spoilers, but it's like he put it that where they had that fight in Calm as like you're doubting me, you think I'm not like the real deal and all that.
That was a very interesting thing that they added in, and I am interested to see how that goes continually. Because outside of context, it's almost like what's kind of going on here. It's hard to really like get a vibe from it. But at least it was very interesting, especially what's the Mako reactor chapter?
Gongaga.
Okay, that's
9.
Maybe like number. Okay, 9.
Chapter 9.
Okay,
yeah.
So yeah, at chapter 9 we do get a little bit of that, but still, I really want to see more of all of that.
Yeah, we're totally gonna see that, especially now how the game leaves. Who's left in the party after this one? But I feel having that moment allowed Tifa to be kind of like an audience surrogate, like through so much of this game. Like you see a lot of this game through Tifa's eyes, and how like well developed they had Tifa, that she's such a strong but also like a very reserved character, that even like in some of those side quests that you find, like when you see that she's about to say something, you see kind of like how she tries to like collect herself to try to be like a mom of the group in a way, and that's something that wasn't there in the original. It's like so well made in this one, that then obviously she has the big moment in chapter 9 over at the Gongaga reactor, and then kind of like what happens afterwards with a specific scene in a bedroom. That's like if
that
you
sounds so sketchy.
Yeah, I know. Like putting it that way, but I was just saying that even in there, like you understand like Cloud's relationship with her like more in a more meaningful way. And also interesting fact, Paul, like that what they did with Tifa there in chapter 9, that was not in the original. Something similar happens in the original, but it's much later. They kind of sort of introduced this here to kind of give an idea why she's able to do that when she does that in like later on in the story. I found that really interesting for them to like add that element here, and how that like builds that relationship. But even just like Cloud has such interesting relationships with almost everyone. Like his relationship with Yuffie is funny. It's so freaking funny. It's like it's a sibling relationship that even when you take her on the date, if you somehow like build your social link circle. Have you seen the clip of the?
I saw the one that you showed me for the aftermath, especially. Yeah. I didn't watch anything for the during part.
Yeah, during the during part is not quite romantic, but it's like they play with each other. They play like they're siblings. It's like so funny because she does like and Claudia's like and she does, it's like super. It's like super.
Like very Zach reaction. Because that's exactly what happened to him when he finally caught up with Yuffie.
In
Crisis Core. I remember right when they get off, and she's like, "If you tell anyone about this, I'll kill you, or I'll have you killed." I can't remember.
And she says the exact same thing to Cloud in this one. So it's like, and even other characters like Red 13, who really comes into his own in this game. Like they added an extra quirk to this character that I was not expecting. That then when it was revealed, is like makes his
early makes more sense because there's no voice acting. You can't get away with that. Like, how do you even do that? So with this, really adds depth to him, because I was one of those people that was like, Red 13 is great, and a lot of people will say that he's one of like the key members of this, but I had trouble like really connecting with him as a character. This time around though, my goodness, I loved that dude.
And this is also something that it was problem with the original compared to the modern games. It's like a lot of story for those individual characters starts and stops, and then unless you have them like in your party, you don't hear anything. However, here, because your party's always with you, always commenting, even if they're not like the ones that you're playing, that helps endear you more. Because it's like, yeah, they may not be like part of the main three, even though they're. I love what they did, that you can create like three sets of like party members to kind of like switch around if you kind of like are feeling like, and just kind of like on the fly you press X and then press L1 or R1. That allows for the party to always feels like it's always there. In a way, other Final Fantasies have not been able to like fully portray, other than maybe 15, which obviously because it's it's you, Noctis, and the guys. And that's it, and they have them all. So this takes that idea and has everyone in, like at least everyone that can be playable is like together, and that helps you be built, because you keep hearing Red 13, especially how he was before he reveals himself, like what he really is when you get to his chapter in chapter 10, and then how they build that in his chapter was like really cool. They recreated a really cool scene from the original here, like even better. So all of that like really helps, and then with the social links, how like you can build that for then the eventuality of you getting to the date that happens twice in chapter 8 and chapter 12.
What is interesting though, something I found out, because the friend I mentioned who never played the original was completely blindsided by the fact that there is a romancing option, only because I told him he was on chapter 9.
Oh no.
After the Golden Saucer. It was never like clearly represented, this is what this is building to. So it's very interesting to see so many people that are like, oh, I didn't think anything of it, the fact that Tifa was walking around with me. Like, because it's not really told. It's only because like all of us people who've played the original are like, oh yeah, that's what they're building for. Get ready for it because of this reason. So that was another like random example where I thought was very interesting of the society kind of informing the audience on what needed to happen.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, what's funny is that when you have the first conversation with Tifa after their fight, when you're in calm, when they have like the little circle and you have those conversations that has the conversation wheel for the 3 answers for worst, middle, and best, that's when you're trained over the social links. He probably missed that. So that's probably what happened, because that's when you're introduced to that concept. She's the first one that you can talk to. So, and that's where you can start repairing your relationship after what happened the night before at the inn. So, and how well they really portrayed the dates. Like, first, like the one where you're running around in chapter 8, and then chapter 12, that it's like this game's opera scene, which, depending on who has a higher affinity, is like who you have with you when you're doing kind of like that opera scene that is like goes so hard. There was a similar opera version of this in the original one, but it wasn't a musical number. It was just kind of like an exaggerated dialogue being told, like of things happening like on a stage. This was straight up, oh yeah, we're the guys that made the Final Fantasy VI opera scene. We're gonna go big, and then we're gonna have a song that you probably already heard at the trailer for the Game Awards, but in context, boy does it hit. Yeah. Like in context of like the story, and seeing that song play at the end credits, holy shit, that was like so. It was such a powerful moment. That was like one of the few moments that I was kind of like smile crying while I was happening, because it was like there was such a tender beauty to how they did it
again with their music, man. Yeah. I sat there because it reminds me of Stand By Me with Final Fantasy 15, and it's like, oh, that's recontextualize all of this, and now I hear that I want to go back to all of the trailers, but I know that if I listen to that song,
you're gonna start feeling
it's gonna be like, Oh no, it's all makes sense in context. I need to go back and see that one that everyone was talking about had the spoilers in it. I never went back and watched that trailer.
Yeah,
So maybe
trust
I
me.
can go see
I saw it yesterday. Kind of like when I was like thinking about it, went back to see some of those trailers. I was like, holy crap, they showed a lot here. They really showed a lot, including the pivotal. Yeah.
Like, I want to understand what was so spoilery, or if it was just like an out of context thing that people thought was like big, but was it really like a spoiler?
That it was like it seemed big. You don't have the context, but you're seeing visual that you're like, maybe I shouldn't watch that. Yeah, I shouldn't watch that. So
but
it's
it
like,
ended up not being what actually played out in the game.
I mean, we
Or
saw
how it was supposed to be.
I mean, we saw how the ending went. We're gonna get to that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to know for my own sanity, like what that was.
And also, I can confirm, Paul, because I went to see every single clip. The funniest date of that game, depending on how it is.
Are you talking about the grumpy old man?
Yes, the grumpy old man one is freaking phenomenal because it's like if you fumbled it back basically with either Aerith, Tifa, or even Yuffie, like you're late or they're like tied. It like somehow their affinities, which by the way, when you finish the game, you unlock a play log that kind of tells you like the percentage of your affinities to kind of give you an idea like how you went. Like if for some reason your affinities remains the same with like all the female characters, either you're gonna go on a date with Barret or with Red 13, which is the most adorable thing because it's kind of like taking a pet to like a Ferris wheel, and he acts like such a pet. But the best one is like the worst one, but it's still the funniest one, which is kind of like the man hour, where it's like, well, I'm gonna go on a date on a night with the boys with Sid.
Night with the boys.
Yeah, with Sid, Vincent, and Kate Sith, and and the Ferris wheel scene is hilarious because Vincent falls asleep immediately. Cloud is being his usual brooding self. Sid is like, why the hell is this so slow? And then Kate Sith was like, why the hell am I here with like this grumpy old man? Like, you're not enjoying this. Someone get me out of here. It's like there's just something there. And I would say this is like a Kate Sith, because if you played the original one, you kind of know like what his shtick is and kind of what he does. Like they still were able to find a way to make Kate Sith someone that you could like, despite him not being a real character. Especially like when you meet Vincent back at Nibelheim in chapter 11, that he grabs him. He's like, wait. Just and like there's just something that like Kate Sith is like a bastard, but he's also so adorable at the same time, kind of like in that big in that anthropomorphic
guy. Is another example. I think that's one reason why I was so like not prepared for Rebirth, was because I knew the additions were going to be Yuffie and Kate Sith
and Red 13,
and then like continuing Red 13's whole stuff. Was Red 13? He was playable, wasn't he?
He wasn't playable in remake. He was with you.
Never mind.
He was with you. You could be with battle with him, but he was automatic. There was no way for you to like control him.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But but a lot of his movements from remake are here. Like you see him like his like spin attack and the one that he does like the scratches. He does that in remake when he's playing by himself. You just couldn't control him. So.
Got it.
Yeah, those were the three. Those were the three.
So yeah, those were the three that I was not interested in because I never touched them in the original. I didn't like playing as them, or they were a pain in the butt to get. I mean, only Yuffie was a pain in the butt, but that's a different example.
Yeah, Vincent was
already talked about that.
Yeah, Vincent was also like a pain in the butt to get, which is funny. Do you know that when you're
absolutely missable?
Yeah, and fun fact. Do you recognize that the code you have to put into the thing when you're like playing with Kate Sith in that dungeon is the same code you have to put in to fight the beast that gives you the kit for Vincent in the original?
I don't think I remembered that.
Yeah, because
wait a minute.
The 39.
I'm trying to think of what was the code that you have to put in as Kate Sith?
Yeah, it was at 39, 10, 59, 97. Those were that was the exact that was the combination for the safe.
Oh shoot!
Yeah,
I didn't realize that at all.
Yeah.
But man, I'm so glad that I figured that out. Anyway, so yeah, like that was I think one reason is because of the companions that I didn't really care as much about for that. But I was so glad that they either took another pass over them or really built them out more. But I really feel for Kate Sith now. And I love the fact that the internet's got their hands on him when they're like, and this is a grown-ass man with a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Moonlighting as a cat.
No, think about it this way, because you can play as Kate Sith in the climactic moments of the game. Think that all that weird shit is happening while Reeve is like his computer. All of that happening is his computer. It's like so funny, but
in his little cubicle going.
Yeah, but I would say like they even because I played the original one, like slight spoilers. We're still not going full spoilers. Like in the original one, obviously he betrays you. Like also kind of like similar when you're going to the Temple of the Ancients. Like there's still a betrayal here, but they added an extra quirk where this betrayal was done like in Kate Sid's eye, kind of like for the good of the party, because he had heard these stories of like anyone that goes into the Temple of the Ancients goes to die, never goes out. He wanted to get rid of the Turks. Be like, I'm gonna tell them to go there so they can go like get killed themselves over there. That was kind of like his idea, but they never let him like let it explain, because obviously when they got betrayed, because they had the key, they had the map, they knew where to go, and then he took it back. He did it kind of like under good intentions, but obviously it was a hard betrayal that they didn't let him explain. And then obviously he has a big moment that they recreated it perfectly, like his big moment at the Temple of the Ancients. That happens in the original. I won't remember when that happened when I played 7 the first time last year, and I was like, oh, R.I.P. Oh wait, lol. That's interesting. So that was done in a more LOL thing in the original one, but in this one kind of like that felt like a triumphant moment, like for this character and his return. Like again, just how well they've like written all these characters. That is like so well. But before we dive into full spoilers, Paul, like mini games. There's so many mini games in this game. The most mini games I've probably seen in a game. But I actually just saw Gene Park tweet that Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth this year actually has more, like even more mini games. Like
I saw the post from Gene.
Yeah. That is like which is wild, because also like I know that Infinite Wealth had a full-on Pokemon style like mini game, like the side distraction. Yeah. There was even an Animal Crossing style distraction. Is like that's how hard that game goes in mini games. But this game's also no slouch. It's like Queen's Blood. God damn it, that card game. I've lost so many hours just playing that addictive, stupid like card game with its really what would you say the music reminds you of? Like I can't think of something specific, but the music that plays when you're like when you're playing, it's like it's obviously very casino like, but it reminds me of something else that feels like very heartwarming. You know, it feels like it feels very cozy playing that card game, especially like trying to nail it and being at the mercy of RNG sometimes, because that can be like really brutal. But yeah, tell me about Queen's Blood.
Oh, so Queen's Blood. I started off hating this game.
Yeah.
I hated it so much. It was
because they force
so
it on
boring.
you. They force it on you at the first time, and it's hard to grasp at first.
Yeah. It is very hard to grasp. It's confusing. You only have a couple of options for your cards. And I'm glad that they walk you through every step of it, but even then, it still took me a while, because it's not very clear on like how to get the most progress across the board, how to get that to then number your add up to your numbers, how to make sure your numbers were higher than the other numbers. I would do everything perfectly right sometimes, and I'd finish up, and I'm like, oh, I think I did a really good job, and I wouldn't look at the score close enough, and then I'd look over and be like, oh man, I got destroyed in every category despite doing it all right, I thought. And I would just redo it until I would win eventually. But after like 5-ish to 10-ish games, it started to click. I started getting some better cards. Another thing is that the cards they give you at first for winning are not great improvements, and that's what was messing me up too. Yeah. Because like in Gwent, obviously we're going to compare everything to Gwent.
Oh yes.
All of the cards you get are immediate improvements over what you had before. So it's just like a no-brainer to throw that in and keep it going. But this was not that case, and I really screwed myself over for a while. But after a certain point, I just kind of had a decent, like, good enough kind of system. And as long as I rolled good on the first round, I would win. But if I did not, it was over for me, and I might as well restart it. So it really grew on me. I'm surprised at how much depth there was in it. Clearly, there was a lot of work put into this thing. I can't even begin to fathom the work that goes into creating a game like this for within a game itself. to make it fair enough and fun enough. And then you have to keep in track of like, is this a single player game so you can kind of make the main character broken if you have a good setup, or does this need to be competitive? Because we found out that Gwent needed to be changed quite a bit if you made it competitive. Same thing for this if they end up expanding on it. But
it would be crazy if they don't. Like, the response to Queen's Blood has been like the most unanimous like loved thing like I've seen.
It. They said, oh yeah, if this continues, we're definitely going to expand on this. And we said, okay, I'm not going to touch that with a 20-foot pole, but I'm glad they will. So yeah, it's crazy. And
but it's not just Queen's Blood. Everything else, like the Fort Counter minigame that you got to play in intermission briefly, it comes back in Junon in like some of those side quests. There's the Chocobo racing. There's like there's soccer that you can play as Red 13. There's the
I did love the soccer.
Yeah, it's like there's just such wide variety of like mini games that happen here, and they happen all kind of like in the middle of the game, as kind of like what adds to the silliness that helps build up this world. And especially with then by the time that you get to the Golden Saucer, where there's like the Chocobo racing, there's the Star Fox like on-rail ship shooter that reminded me also from the ship sections from the Gummy ship from Kingdom Hearts. Like a lot of those mechanics were like, oh yeah, this reminds me of this. This just looks kind of like way prettier. It's just a bonanza of mini games that I was like, it's wild that they were able to put all of that. And modern Final Fantasy has not been able to have this much variety within them, like in years. This was like a big key feature of that original like PS1 game. And then like when we start to get into like more HD graphics, in fact, like it's so funny, Paul. This is the first Final Fantasy game in years in the modern era that brought back towns, like the town system. You actually going through towns. When they moved to HD, they were like, yeah, towns are too hard to do in HD. That's why like Final Fantasy 13 was just like one corridor. And then like 15 was the other one that tried to like bring that back, but it was just kind of like just a town with like a vendor. That's not like that was not like a real town. And then the other one was just like a scripted town, like when you got to the chapter 9, like the water place of FF15, where the Leviathan thing happens. That was just more like kind of like a set drop. In here is like you can go from Calm to Junon. There's some places within the Grasslands all seamlessly, like for the first time, like in a Final Fantasy game, because even 16 segmented itself. If you remember, you were going through like these sort of open areas that were not really that open, and then they had like a line that you had to like step in before they load you into something else. It's like they were able to do all of that, and mini games within like those towns kind of like it helped with the variety. Where I didn't like much of the mini games were when they forced on you. Like I loved playing Queen's Blood when like it popped up there. There is I love the tournament over at the boat. Like doing that tournament was so great because it brought back so many original characters from Remake into this game, and also had the amazing Red 13 moment. Is it hilarious of him not being allowed to play because he was a dog? The hilarity of seeing him like stand in the counter like being so salty that they're not letting him play, and then him dressing up as a Shinra soldier and like walking like this afterwards. Like there's just and like that tournament was great. You can totally skip it, and the game won't penalize you for it. The only time that you have to play Queen's Blood is at the Dust Bowl, like the beneath area of the.
Honestly, I hated the Dust Bowl. Yeah,
the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl, the area where you're like post Golden Saucer, and then like everyone gets like trapped, and then you have to do like a bunch of stuff. That was also in the original game. That was not a good part either. So it's like that was boring. It was bad. It went quicker in this game than it did back in the original one, because the original was a little bit more obtuse what you needed to do to get a conversation with the major. So I was like, okay, this one much quicker. Obviously, this is still like a low point from back in the day. It's still a low point here. But the Chocobo racing was so much better here. Like that was the first time you did the Chocobo racing, and that was like, okay, this is fun. This is like it has like the drifting or holding R2 to drift like inside. I was like, yeah, this is like straight up from Mario Kart. Yeah. Like if they would do
it works, man.
Yeah, it felt so nice. I did all those races. I got the trophy. I got to put it. It's like I spent like one day last week just doing those races back to back, all first place. Those were like really fun, but there are a few mini games that I will say when you're pursuing a 100% completion run like I am to try to get a platinum trophy.
You seem a little bit
Fuck them. Like the 3D brawler one. When it happens in the main story, amazing moment. When you get to the Golden Saucer and you find Dio, that muscular man that like challenges Cloud, and then they're like, we're gonna have a battle, and suddenly it's gonna be like a 3D brawler of their them being like modeled like in PS1 form, but in like polygonal form. That it's so funny how they made the original polygonal forms of these characters work so well. Like recreated
it really
there.
Does. When you really break it down, it goes to show, even though everybody was really talking smack on it, being like, oh man, the whole body's like 7 shapes, haha. It's like that was a good design though, for not only the limitations of its time, but the fact that it translates so well, both in the realization of all of that when you don't even concede anything, and then also when you shrink it back down to the silly little polygon size with all of these extra power of our systems now, it just still looks good.
They work in HD and they work in the context. They're like, when that happened with For Condor, where like Barret, Tifa, and Cloud get transported into like that board game, and they switch to that, it was like, this works so well. It's like, they look so beautiful that I'm like, I could like take like an HD remake of exactly as it is, like Overworld or that, kind of like in this style. Like if they were able to do it, it's like, because it worked. It was so charming. I was like, it was so good seeing how far they took it. And that they like committed to the bit of seeing them all in like in this model. And in the few times that you have to do the 3D brawling, like just for story stuff, it's not bad. It's like it's good. It's like it's fun. I kind of wish that it was more than just dodging and waiting to punch until they did like a blue block, and then be like, if someone does it in this way, you have to either press L2 or R2 the right way to punch them. But when you do the actual mini games to like get the high scores for specifically for a trophy, the higher you go in that thing, my god, it's so frustrating, because it's like the animation read of seeing like a punch go this way and you only see it here, or maybe seeing the punch here. It's like so lightning quick that you don't know if you have to like block up or block left. You know what I needed to do? Like at a certain point, I learned this because I had to go to Reddit. I heard about the pause game like cheat. Every time they do a movement, pause it, see the pose, go look at a list of poses to be like, okay, this is gonna be the one, and then hold the stick, press start till they block. Like, I had to do that to be able to complete, especially for Sephiroth, which is like the final.
Clearly did not consult any fighting game people.
No.
To like understand readability, because that is impossible. I was struggling with Dio, and it just his moves of like, all right, I have 2 options. I'm gonna punch you this way. I'm gonna punch you with the haymaker, and I could not figure it out. Just the fact that they specified it as 2 different things. They said dodge and guard. Those are 2 different actions, I would call it, but they are the same thing in the game. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
If you press the stick in the direction you need to do, like for what's coming, you dodge. Like if you press it early. If you press it too late, it's a block. So
right, but then it does the same thing.
So
it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, no, with dodge, it's like you completely dodge, and the thing with 3D brawler is that the character has to build their ATV meter to do like a finishing move. Right. When you dodge, they don't get any. If you block, they get a little bit.
Okay.
They get a little bit, so it's like you want to dodge instead of block.
But like none of that was clarified, because it would say, all right, dodge. Move to the right, block is to the left. So I was like, okay, dodge it. I would go to the left regardless.
And they're they're the same button. That's the thing. It depends on the timing of when you get it.
It's so poorly explained. But there's a lot of stuff to go about with that. But I don't know. Do you want to jump into spoilers now?
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna go, because I wanted to mention that, because I needed to get out of my system, especially because I did the mini game for the Chocobo flying in Cosmo Canyon. That thing's broken. The one where you have to like do go up and down to get through the rings, especially the third one that you have to do, is like there's a 9,600 scoreboard for that, and the things you have to do where you basically have to glitch the game. I had to look a video of someone having to like fly straight into like a robot to move the ring to give you enough altitude to get to the other thing. I'm like, they did not play test this too much to be able to do the high scores. It's like for someone that wants to do the platinum trophy like I am, it's like you're gonna start like running into a lot of problems, especially in some of those mini games, because then you start seeing, oh yeah, it's like whoever designed this can go to hell, because it's like this was not play tested a lot. Like I appreciate the variety, especially when you get the initial taste of all of them. Like, oh, this is fun diversion. It's just when you're getting into the nitty gritty in the later harder versions of those things, way harder. But yeah, we have been dancing around the spoiler. Now it's full on spoiler talk. So and by the way, like, because I'm reviewing this game, I'm still deciding. Like, I asked Paul what his score would be. Depending on how this next part of this conversation goes, that will determine where I go with the review. Because it's like, this is a game that I had. Let's just say, so much of this game is a 10 out of 10 for me. But I'm not giving it a 10. Specifically because there's specifically with how some story moments at the end kind of go that I both love and I'm very, very conflicted about. But spoiler starts right now. So, Paul, Aerith died. Or did she?
Aerith freaking died, bro.
Yeah.
But, gosh, it's not a simple answer anymore after all of that.
I'll say this, for this, is like, they were able to, especially because them saying, ending remake with the unknown journey continues. That was the final tagline of that game, kind of like what everyone had at the forefront of their mind when the final moments of remake happened, when you defy fate and you fight Sephiroth, and then the whispers of fate disappear and things like that. It was like, wait, the unknown journey, does it mean that they could change the story? And it almost felt like, even from moment one, because we dodged all this conversation early on, but now we can also mention it, it's like Zack's in this game. We kind of already talked about it, but it's like he's the first character you play as. You play in wherever he is, where he's like bringing Cloud into Midgar, but when he's bringing him in, something had happened, like a massive like cataclysm started like in the city that killed Barret, Tifa, and injured Red 13 enough that they took him out, but then he still had like some final fight left in him. And also like Aerith was like unconscious, and then you kind of play briefly with Zack. And that was the moment when I started playing, because you played the game after the day after, because it was gonna unlock at midnight for you, and it unlocked at my 11. When that started, I was like, oh man, Paul's gonna have a smile seeing his boy be the first taste you get with this game. And then when you play with him at the end of that sequence, like he grabs Aerith, but she feels like she's dead because she even drops the materia, like in the same way. So then from that moment, you're like, they're already teasing this. What's happened? It's like, is this like the end goal?
Very early.
Yeah, they're setting the stage very early. Even though after that moment, we go to Nibelheim. That's what's funny. They start us off with this weird like whatever's happening with Zack, but then the game picks up like back in the original game. A flashback to Nibelheim that everyone could play early with the demo, and I would say probably a mistake that they did that, because there's a very specific move that they teach you there. A lot of people forgot that I unearthed for you, the one that you press R1 and D-pad up and down. That 6 a player immediately to start doing like combos with like different characters.
Teach you something extremely important in
a month before
optional demo that came out a month before. It's just crazy.
Not an optional demo, a demo that could help you skip story, like after when you play like the original game.
So it's a demo that helps you skip part of the story, but it skips the part of the story that was tutorial. Besides like one example, skips the fun part of that early section, but you have to play all of the really boring conversation parts.
Yeah, it's especially when you're like limping around with Cloud when he gets injured during the Nibelheim like fire and all that. Fun fact, I replayed that entire thing. I was like, I want to play that again, because I was like, I remember when I played the demo initially, the combat wasn't quite clicking, because I was like, oh yeah, I haven't played Remake in a while. This is definitely not like 16. And I actually replayed that night. I was like, yeah, he's giving me the option to skip. I want to see it again. And I remember them teaching that, but I didn't quite understand what they were teaching me, because this game has a tutorial problem that they over tutorialize so much, but then you don't feel like you really grasp it on first at first glance. And that's kind of what I remember. I was like, crap, that was taught there. You can start attacking, and then you press R1 up and down, and then whoever is in your party teleports in front of the enemy and starts attacking. So that's a fun way to build up ATB quicker, instead of just pressing D-pad down that they're all the way back. So now you have to run into an enemy to start attacking. It like changed flow completely. But yeah, so the story picks up right there, and then that's where obviously I would say more people will have a better sense of like what the inciting event of the story was if they played that demo there and played then the open world stuff. Because then when you play that demo a month before and then you pick up in the Grasslands and all that, you don't feel the plot you don't feel the plot momentum. But yeah, it's like they tease us that would suck, but then we go, yeah, let's jump ahead again to the end. So it's like chapter 14. They had teased from September back last year that the game was gonna end at the Forgotten City. So that was where disc 1 ended. So everyone was like, oh, so they're gonna do the Aerith moment. They're like laying it on really thick. At the beginning of that chapter, you get teleported to wherever Zack is. You're playing with Cloud and Aerith when they were recreating the date that Zack and Aerith had back in Crisis Core. If you like caught up on that, like you realize that they were recreating that and really not understanding what is this? Is this an alternate universe? What is this, an alternate timeline? And it turns out it's both. Because Sephiroth then goes on a multiverse of madness style tangent to explain to you that any deviation from the timeline creates like both a new timeline and a universe, and his goal is trying to kind of like merge it all together. And then that's where you get the white materia that is holy that got deactivated in Remake, like because you defied fate. When they defied fate, holy deactivated. So it was like, oh, so holy holy doesn't work anymore. So how is she gonna cast holy if Sephiroth summons meter, which is the whole thing with the black materia. And in that alternate time, like Aerith gives that like during that date, at the end of that date, gives that materia to Cloud, and then he gets teleported to Prime timeline, whatever that is, to deliver that to like Aerith, and then you go through a thing that then she leaves, she goes by herself to the Forgotten City to do the prayer, and it's like, I would say the tension you feel heading into that moment, like knowing where you are, the music, hearing her prayer, knowing what's about to happen.
And as soon as you walk up with the way that the what are the hooded figures? The Whispers.
The Whispers, huh?
They start coming up against you and slowing you down. I even took a screenshot of it at the time because I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. This is it. I'm like freaking out, very Michael Scott. It doesn't take a lot to get me to, I mean, it takes a lot to get me to that. Mm-hmm. And that was one of those moments where I took a picture for you of my heart rate.
I know.
It was 119.
Yeah. Dude, I send you the meme of the Kermit like biting his nails. You feel that because you're like, holy crap! Like you technically know what's about to happen, but then you're kind of like put with that mindset of like, are they actually gonna do it or are they gonna change it? And then they did, and then they didn't. Somehow they did it both, because obviously when she's there, like when he's holding the sword, because it's very similar to what happened in the original, like in the original game, like
exactly.
He was gonna strike Aerith down because again, like there's a reason Sephiroth calls him a puppet, because he has Cloud has the Jenova cells. Sephiroth can control anyone that has Jenova cells, so that's why like Cloud goes through that whole like mental like breakdowns all the time. So that's what happened in the original one, that he was gonna strike Aerith and it doesn't happen, and then Aerith looks at him, smiles, and then that's when Sephiroth comes in with the sword and pierces her. So in this one, when he's coming down, then like Cloud like is in that position, then breaks through and then like slashes. And
I had such a like little kid excitement. Like I warned my wife before, and I was like, listen, they're probably going to try to kill this character that I really care about. I'm going to be inconsolable, but they're also going to do some weird stuff. So just don't expect anything, or expect something weird for me to do during this time. And when that happened, I was like,
because it was like this just saved her. And then was like and you notice what happened, especially at the moment that he strikes the sword, what shows up? A rainbow. Yeah,
the exact symbol of creating a new branching timeline. I did not catch that at first. I was like, wait, so that means he, like, because I saw Cloud do his whole thing, and I was like, I feel like Sephiroth, his sword didn't really deflect. What happened with that? What happened? And I was just like, I was going with it, and then as soon as you see the blood on the end of the sword, I was like, son of a gun.
Yeah,
so I didn't even realize that it created a timeline at first until I went back to it. Because I told you I had to go back.
Yes. No, yeah, I had to, like, I actually played the ending again because I had a save before it, and I did it in easy this time. And it's really satisfying if you have like a high powered like characters like I did. Doing that on easy felt like really cathartic, like laying on those final bosses. But what's funny is that you only see the blood when you see the flashes. You see like kind of like what Sephiroth was mentioning, that's the moment where a lot of timelines in different universes are starting to converge, a reunion of sorts. So it's like, in one timeline, that sword is just there, no blood. Yep. When Barret, Tifa, the crew comes in, because they didn't go through...
It flashes again.
It flashes to see like what had happened. So, like, the implication here now is that when Cloud went through the Destiny Crossroads thing, the white thing that they opened for him to go to Aerith, that's why, like, him already being in that state of mind, he's like straddling the timeline right now, where it's like he gets to see both sides at the same time. And that is something that's so, like, of course, the most Kingdom Hearts Nomura thing ever, of like seeing those things. And then when you really think about it, I don't know if I like it. Like, I don't know, kind of like, I don't know if I like that compromise, because I'll say this, like, especially when you see it, you start seeing like, oh crap, he actually got her. She's bleeding, and like Cloud's like crying about, obviously, because you're starting to see like flashes to him saying dialogue that if you read lips, people caught up. He's saying the dialogue that he tells Sephiroth in the original one is like, shut up, stop talking about it, like, she's gone, like, her smile, all of that, like, the things that he said, like, when she's there, like, apparently he's mouthing that when you're like flashing back on all that, and I'm like,
I feel like I've jumped. Well, we both jumped a little too far into when we started talking about spoilers, but I need to like, one of the things I feel like we missed was Cloud's grief, and I wish we could have had more of that, because like we got a little bit of it during,
we see glimpses,
like, all of this up until this point, but like for Cloud to have that breakdown and talk about Aerith, and specifically like her smile and all of that, the stuff that he's remembering of her, like we're getting robbed of that during this section of it. And of course, like, you could argue that if they put it in the last one, sure, but I feel like that's not the right place for it.
Yeah, because it robs this moment specifically, because here's the thing, like, do you remember that I told you that I sort of got spoiled out of something that IGN posted?
Yes.
So they posted, this was the tweet, it said, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth ending makes a mess of that moment. That's what they tweeted. So it was,
well, that was...
Yeah.
Okay, I think I had even seen that, but I was just like... Of course, because there's going to be some kind of, like, reference to it, or some kind of, like...
And I kind of get what they were... I kind of get what they're mentioning, because the moment where Cloud slashes Sephiroth's sword that creates that kind of rainbow, it's like... then he keeps you, because that moment, oh, he saved her, but it's like, wait, he got her? And like when you see like the sword, like the blood and all that, and he's holding her, he's crying, like Sephiroth tells, those are like fake tears, you're not really feeling anything. And then it flashes again, and that's where like Aerith like touches his face, be like, don't worry, it's okay, like I got this. And then like Cloud tells him, I got this, but you don't know if it's that alternate time, like she's talking with like Aerith, but the Aerith, like what they're like, what the other team is seeing is basically her bloody corpse, like with Cloud in his hand. Is like, it's just a complete like flashing moments of like, you see like what you see different perspectives at the same time, that you don't know like which one is true, which one is real. And it makes it adds to that theory that I saw online, that it's like clear that Cloud is existing in both timelines like at the same time, like especially with his already like fractured mind. And as I'll still say that the moment where like the holy still dropped and it hit the floor and the song hits, I'm like, god damn it, they got me again. It's like, because that's how it was in the original one. When she gets killed, it's like silence, and then the music starts until like holy hits. And I'll still say that even if the emotions were not there, the music, like what was happening in the music was telling something else. That the moment that transitions towards the boss fight with like that mixed song of Aerith's theme and Jenova's theme, like all together, I was in tears the moment the fight starts, because it's like because it was very manipulative at that moment, because it's like you kind of see, because especially at that moment you see at that point, because I didn't know what was gonna happen afterwards with the on your left moment. We're gonna get to that. Yep. But how I saw it at first was like, okay, they're kind of like fumbling this to kind of at least give Aerith a chance to say goodbye to Cloud, like at first, like,
and
because
I I want to at least say the good side of it, but make sure I don't forget to talk about something that I really need to mention about that specific reasoning. But
at the end, that happens right at the end. Yeah.
About like exactly what you said with giving Aerith the ability to say goodbye and my issues with that. But first of all, on like the spectacle side of it, because I want to kind of walk through. Okay, we've already kind of fast forwarded past all of the other parts of the spoilers to Aerith's big moment. So let's talk about, I guess, just the build up for it. We didn't even talk about Chapter 13's Temple of Time.
Yeah, the Temple of the Ancients is a long chapter. Very long.
I appreciate they really upped Aerith's power. Like, she was always that powerful, but they showed her being that powerful by this point. Like,
that's when you're manipulating everything.
Just changing the entire fortress around you with Aerith and her staff. Like, she felt like Gandalf in that moment where she's just like, I've got this power.
Ironic.
Come at me, bro.
Anyway. Good reference.
Aerith the White returns in Two Towers.
Yeah. Technically, she's white. Technically, a lot of... Yeah.
It's not lost on me. So anyway, so yeah, we got the whole tower situation. We've got the fact that Sephiroth is blatantly lying to Cloud and making him like confused about Tifa. Like, I'm kind of like
you're working
back to a few things that we skipped over because we didn't want to talk about it. There's one thing that I wanted to bring up about the whole Tifa situation where, like, Cloud just doesn't believe Tifa's real and stuff. I remember in the trailers, people were losing their minds about it.
Yeah, it was the first big trailer in Summer Game Fest that ends with, like, the scene where Tifa, like, slashes at Sephiroth. He catches her and then pushes her and he slashes her in the middle. That had the voice who were saying, like, you know I kill her, Cloud. Who is she? That's how that trailer ended. Everyone was like, wait a second, what?
Yeah, I'm guessing that it was because of ratings, but I wanted to see the cut wider because it looked so much like just the tiniest little cut along her stomach, and Cloud's like, they've killed her. Oh my gosh! It's like, buddy, calm down. She's fine.
I also feel the reason why we didn't get like Aerith's death the exact same way was especially because they added blood here. If they had shown blood, this would have been an M-rated game, and they didn't want that. It's clear that they didn't want. Yeah,
but that's just it. You could easily do that without showing blood because you showed plenty of it in certain other areas. We have it splattering across Cloud's face.
It's not a death; it's a homecoming.
We have Zack covered in blood at the start of the game. So it's like, I think people forget what you can actually do with T ratings. But then, like,
stabs in the back are M-rated territory. It's the same with R rating. Do you know that the Avengers movie from 2012 initially had an R rating because of Loki stabbing Agent Coulson
from the back?
The back, and they had to like really, they had to like cut really quickly and not show blood for that to be like PG-13. Like, stabs in the back are considered M-rated, R-rated territory.
That's so weird, like, because you think back on some other PG-13 games or movies, that's what I meant, that really get away with it. I mean, obviously things that predated PG-13, like Indiana Jones, are a little different.
The created PG-13.
Right. But let me kind of like get myself back on track because I don't know movie rating and systems on that as well. But anyway, so like they did a few things like that, but then say when he stabs Sung, it's like a weird shadow around his body, and I was like, that's a weird thing to do when it doesn't happen anywhere else in the game. But then,
it's stabbed from the front, but from the back is R-rated. That's what's so funny. It's like
it makes sense. But then you have the entire situation with, like, I think I was a little confused on what they were trying to do with Cloud and Tifa. Is like, is she not real and whatever?
Yeah.
Like, and I pretty quickly was realizing, Sephiroth's just messing with Cloud at this point.
It's more.
I feel like we got as much of a resolution to that as I was hoping.
That one is unfortunately a symptom of you having to know the original game and understanding this being like a pseudo sequel where this Sephiroth knows things that happened in the original game, and he's trying to manipulate the timeline because he traveled back in time and wants to like avoid his fate. Tifa is who saves Cloud from his coma in the original game. Like, Tifa is the one that helps Cloud go through the live stream and understand exactly who he is when he's like he's full of Mako poisoning. And a lot of people have always wondered, like, how did Tifa know how to do all of this in the live stream, like, to help Cloud through that? what do we do in chapter 9 in this game when she falls and gets swallowed by the weapon?
I did think that was a really cool thing that they added.
Yeah, they added it as like that's Tifa's first experience, like understanding kind of like how the live stream works in terms of timelines and things like that. That in a way now, if they recreate that scene, which is a very pivotal Cloud moment for like for this game, in the third game, whenever he gets like full Mako poison, because that's what gets him out of his control of Sephiroth and things like that. Like they have pre-established that Tifa at least knows how to handle that, as he's gonna take Cloud through like his mind during that moment. That's kind of like why Sephiroth was trying to turn turn Cloud against Tifa, because he knows that Tifa was the one that saved Cloud. He's a big so that's why like this game like solidified the relationship of Tifa and Cloud even stronger beyond you pursuing the social link, which by the way, like from the dates, Tifa's the only one that Cloud literally kisses, like legit kisses. You never get a
see
kiss.
The lips.
Yeah. No, you literally see them kiss, and then the camera moves away. So it's like
ridiculous.
I know it's like it's so funny because like they made it explicit that Cloud really feels something, like has really strong feelings for Tifa. With Aerith, he has feelings. They're like more tender. They feel like it's like there's a clear love that's there.
You and I talked about it. It's a lot more of that getting caught up in his memories with Zach, and that they already had a lot of that front-loaded stuff taken care of. They got the date, they got all that handled. So of course that's like a little bit more tied into what Cloud feels at this point, and that's why I like to see my headcanon as, for the first half of the game, Cloud clearly likes Tifa because of Cloud, but he loves Aerith
because of Zach.
He's also Zach at the same time, and it's not until after he comes out of that, after Aerith has died, that he gets his life together.
And he realizes that what he felt for Tifa is that was always his feelings. And I like that canon. I really do like that, and I feel like the game was written in a way that those two canons can work, even though I do feel that then they do lay the Aerith thing a little too thick in those final chapters. In a way that is like, okay, especially with that date in chapter 14, when they're like where they're around, and then she tells us like, I like you, but there's a version of I like you, and there's also the I like you, something like that. And what's funny to me is that because I played a full Tifa, it's my girl kind of thing, like, because Cloud doesn't say anything. And then Aerith was like, at least I know where we stand. Kind of like in my way, I was like, yeah, because I love Tifa. At least that's how I played it with that one. But obviously, like, she always felt that with them. But how strong the relationship of Tifa and Aerith were, that I really felt like if we didn't feel Cloud, if we were got robbed of Cloud grieving for Aerith, even though we see him grieving when it's flashing, in that moment where you see flashes of what would be the other timeline originally, where he's like mouthing, versus like the other one where like Aerith is still alive and puts his hand on his face. Like when Tifa gets there, like I feel like why I feel like Tifa is the heart and soul of Rebirth. Like you feel her grief a lot, to the point that she doesn't even speak in the final cutscenes. Like is like you really feel like they have they build their relationship so well as friends, even though they both had like a similar. They both had the liking toward the same person in a way. That's what's funny, that they're able to like the same person but still be really good friends despite that. That you never really felt like, even though there were like tiny jealousy parts, if you were able to like, especially when you're in that first date at the Golden Saucer and you find the other girl and you talk about them, it's like it's like you don't really feel too strong jealousy out of that. It feels more like, oh yeah, cool. It's like I hope you guys.
But it's like, it's also that sounds like somebody who doesn't feel like they're close enough to be like actually pissed off about it. Because I also had Tifa during my chapter 8 part, and when Aerith was like, "Oh, okay," so like it could be read as, "Go head on, sister, do your thing," and also like, "Dang, I thought I was kind of close with him. What the heck?" It's
funny, you can, depending on your connections, that you can get that feeling, and I feel that that's a testament of how they wrote it, but. That's where I feel the emotional side of like losing Aerith is more than like what they ended up doing. Even though, again, like circling back, the beginning boss against Jenova, like recreated the having Aerith's song playing at the same time, like as you're fighting him, because that's how it was in the original one. As soon as Sephiroth kills Aerith, like he psychs up a Jenova beast at you, and you have to like fight that beast before you put Aerith to like you send Aerith to the live stream, and the early parts of that fight recreated that perfectly, because I had to stop like to soak in the music, because I was like, I literally had like it's almost too like epic a version of that song, I would say, but man, if it doesn't work, because it feels like because at the same time it's like that this was a grand moment, you lost this amazing character technically. So it's like they're gonna psych up, and I don't know if you noticed, you probably heard this from other people, but I'm gonna ask you, do you notice that at the beginning of the fight everyone else has their limit break but Cloud?
I did not notice that.
Yeah, because what happened, like everyone else was angry that they had lost their friend, but because Cloud had just had that moment of like a goodbye with Aerith, he was like more composed towards that battle, and that's like such an interesting kind of like gameplay element of like you can start that fight with your team already with like so pissed off to fight whatever Sephiroth throws at you. That
gosh, am I so glad that for that Jenova fight that you basically have the Advent Children versus Bahamut fight just put into that, where it's like you get that big moment when everybody's helping Cloud get to the front of the line and get that final attack. Yes. I was feeling it. That was like the Final Fantasy 16 stuff that I talked about previously. Like, man, I really wish I could get some of that spectacle in here. I was like,
they got
that's what I'm talking about. It just took
since like chapter 9, since like chapter 9 with like fighting Scarlet at the Gongaga reactor, it was like, oh yeah, they still have those like, they still intersperse some of those epic moments, but it's clear a lot of those epic moments are being reserved for part 3. Like when the story are reaching that climax, but they still made it really climactic. But then also like this fight starts getting very fan servicey immediately after you fight Jenova. And what was that like? Zack and Cloud like finally reuniting together.
That was so hype.
Yeah, I was so smiling. I will say these bastards made us work for it. They tease us with playing with Zack at the very beginning of him having like a combo move that when you start attacking with square and then press triangle for like some quick charge thing that changes his attack, and then every time that you play with Zack throughout this entire game, when they intersperse this throughout the story, it's just you walking around with him. Yeah, until
a little frustrated about that, honestly, I had to say.
But I would say like when you see that they were saving it for like a climactic moment near the end, so you get to play twice with him, which is funny. The moment you take control of Zack, it takes you to the tutorial. I'm like, wow, so we're gonna do a tutorial right at the very end. Okay, that's brave. But
and I guess if we're also jumping into all of that, let me think. So we got the big moment, we got the little moments right after that. I guess I'll go ahead and talk about kind of that, and then also like what happens right after that big fight with Aerith getting the chance to say goodbye. So I don't know how much you know about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Not much, but enlighten me.
You just know the context of it. One of the things that Hirohiko Araki, which is the guy that wrote it, had this mentality that I have internalized deeply. And because no matter what you do or how cool you are or how powerful you are, whatever it is, and I'm going to butcher his quote on it, you don't always get the opportunity to say goodbye. Especially to those you love. And so in all of his all of his chapters that have been adapted and all that, he never gives an opportunity for that character to have a last, like, I'm going to have about 2 minutes to say exactly what I need to say before I die. It is like sometimes you are gearing up to fight the last villain. Sometimes you're not even at the last villain. Sometimes you're at the last part of the fight and suddenly your buddy goes down next to you, but like they always have this everything's all right just for a little moment because we've got each other, and then freaking he takes them out in like a second. And that was always how I viewed that death of Aerith with Final Fantasy VII. That's why it hurt everyone so much.
It's a traumatizing moment for gaming forever.
You don't even get the setup, you don't get the all right, I'm going to get to Aerith, I'm going to help her out, and we're going to get this done. And it's like you get to her and you just watch her die, and that's it. You don't get that second to feel bad. You don't get, like, you're broken, you're shocked, you're sitting there like, oh, if I'd only been there sooner. And with building all of that out, that is, I think, one of the biggest problems of this entire situation. Like, I get that they're going to try to give you, like I told you through text, they're going to try to give us the have your cake and eat it too. They want you to have this, oh, look at how we killed Aerith again, haha. but because we've been messing with the timeline, you might get her back later. Like, you could still get her, you could save her, fix the timeline, or it's going to be just like a different timeline's Aerith or something coming back, but it's not the same, and that defeats the whole purpose of the desperate fight that this gang is in the middle of during their darkest hour. And I almost feel like they're missing not only the point, but they're just gypping themselves from such a powerful story moment of character moment.
I would say had they stopped at the moment where like Cloud tells her I got this, as kind of like as his last time, but because at the beginning, before you just start with the Jenova thing, when he lays her down, you start seeing her like disappear, because you see that when many people die in this game, they start like they get green and disappear. I thought at that moment was like, okay, they at least gave it the moment to give at least a goodbye this time. Yeah. But
and
then
like, I would have allowed that because like, oh, okay, well, we get a last moment because as we've talked about, you get on your left where it's like Cloud's about to face off against Sephiroth in the Kingdom Hearts 2 final battle room.
Yes, the wide room. Yeah.
And then Aerith shows up through a portal and is like, let's kick his ass, boy. And like, that's the whole like, oh shoot. And like, you get the big moment, you get the fight.
Yeah. And I still wasn't like too angry at it, because that was still such a great moment, because at that moment it revealed what those white ghosts were. Because they're like
allowing that part of it, because that's what I thought they were going to do. And then right at the end of all of that, you come back and he does this like Aerith wake up like he's Jesus, like telling her to get up. And she wakes up and looks at him. I was like, wait, does that mean she's alive? And then like she's just dead suddenly, and then it cuts to like, I know they're setting up for something, but the fact that we've done now 2 games of setup without like that kind of payoff to get us into the, like, it doesn't feel like a middle of the game darkest hour. This just feels like, oh, we're a little sad, but Cloud gets to see his Force Ghost wife every once in a while.
And I think that's the moment where it feels like that's where it really complicates it, because it was like, I would have been fine if the goodbye had been like that amazing shot of them like back to back and they were both grabbing hands as she like fades out, because at that point they had already, the way I saw it there, it was like they had already established that her dying, she was already part of the live stream. She's been those white whispers that have been like trying to protect, fighting against the dark whispers of Sephiroth. So I was like, she has a send. I saw it as she has a send. That I was like, that feels like a great send off for her to be like her fight continues in the live stream by herself. But then introducing this like caveat of like, it seems like Cloud is like stuck in between 2 timelines, because everyone else saw her die. Like, that is clear cut, and they are sad. They feel their loss, but then Cloud like gets to see her all the time, and then he feels like really confident that he actually succeeded, which is kind of unnerving. And that to me was like, when you like really think about it as part of his like, the mental breakdown that's about to happen, like based on like where the story goes immediately after, when they go to the impact crater, that's north, when they said that I know where Sephiroth is up north, that's where the reunion happens. That's where like a Sephiroth like takes black materia from him and summons Meteor. I buy it more as they're adding this extra thing, because it's like his mind is so like broken, because he like created a timeline at a very specific moment where he can still see Aerith, but it's like then everything's just gonna come crashing down for him, like when everything like he fully deteriorates in his mind. Like that's like there's an unnerving nature to that, especially how that final sequence plays out, where he sees that he has the black materia and puts it in his sword. And then like when he does that, he looks at the sky and he sees like the cracking of the sky that has been in Zack's timeline. That's where we know that there's kind of like an impending doom happening, and no one else sees it, because again, like in the timeline where Aerith is alive, where he is like speaking to her, like at the end of that thing is like, and she's the one that tells him, "Don't look at the sky." Those timelines that have veered off are on the verge of like collapsing. That's kind of like that's kind of like what it's been implied with like with that calamity. So it's like he gets to see both, and that's interesting, because that puts him like in a very interesting like weird position, especially for a team, because you know that Tifa and Barret are not buying something. It's like they're going ahead with things, but it's like they had their doubts of like how Zack is, how Cloud is acting, because he's acting so like first soldier about it, so like confident and all that, and they just know that that's just not Cloud. They know that something's wrong, but they're still grieving to really care about that. In a way. So I would still say wasn't Cloud too close to the airplane when he was having that conversation with Aerith? And I was like, when that was happening, I was like,
I just wanted them to cut over to everybody else. Like, what the heck is he talking about?
They were kind of missing that. So
I mean, I guess I always saw it as everybody else got in the spot and like sat down in their chairs and locked in.
Yeah.
But I didn't really think too much of that side of it. It's just there's a lot of it.
Yeah, the engine was going hard, and you know how you're sometimes inside an airplane, and when an engine is going is going hard, maybe that's what they didn't listen. But it was like, he's a little too close to the entrance, speaking with Aerith, and Aerith's been like, yeah, I'm staying behind, I'm going back. It's gonna be like my second home, and if there's a problem, I'm gonna light a smoke like Sid told them when you meet Sid, and it was like, you know something's right. There's something wrong, but it was so bittersweet seeing it. You felt it's like, you know that there was something that felt wrong about it, and that held the emotion, especially when the airplane flies off, and then she's just staring at the airplane, and there is like no promises at the end of the line or something like that. I think said the image.
Somebody said that's apparently mistranslated too, where it's like just meant to say like I. Oh shoot.
Let me see.
I trust you or something. Like, try to look it up, but I'm gonna butcher it if I try to make it up myself. But yeah, apparently, like, it's not meant to sound as foreboding as it seems.
Yeah, no promises await at journey's end. That's like the final slogan. Before
that's the English one. Yeah.
Yeah, before it cuts into the credits and the opera song. So, do you know, like, see if you can find like what the actual Japanese version of that says.
Find it right now. But if was there anything else that you had? That of course I'm gonna. Google sucks now. Let me tell you.
I know, yeah. But like Google, it would be like Japanese. How can you put it into the search? Japanese.
I tried searching it in like translation. And if I can.
Yeah, if you can say it, it's like I would still say that I was like left really emotional with like how it ended after that, even though it's like part of me I know was like they're setting up that there's something wrong happening, and that's also very foreboding, especially because they're also like during that time we got cuts to other parts happening around the world, like Rufus Shinra talking with this guy from Organization 13 called Glenn, that hooded guy that turns out he was just kind of like a figment of his imagination, and also another reunion puppet basically. And also I'll say this, Glenn is literally the Nomura problem. Do you know where Rufus killed him? That cutscene happened?
I honestly don't remember Glenn at all, so that was kind of...
Ever Crisis. You never played it.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, they brought Ever Crisis stuff. That mobile game that came out last year was like part of like that story. The whole thing with the Wutai versus Shinra war, that was like kind of cooking up, but that was kind of teased also in intermission. So it's like, obviously you needed to play it, especially because there's the when you're going through the traumas of everyone, when you're like at the Temple of the Ancients, Yuffie's trauma is like really literally built from intermission. That was like the end of that DLC, and it was really powerful. Like him losing Sonan, the guy that was your companion during that during that expansion, and then obviously you see the hooded guys from Nibelheim going all the way up to where they need to go, up to the Northern Crater. So basically them kicking off like what kicked off in OG7, because they were there original, and then they start walking to wherever they need to go for like their reunion. So it's like we got to see hooded guys before, and now we see hooded guys now. So it's kind of like really aligning. And no, one thing that a lot of people are like really wondering is that the thing that shocked them the most with Rebirth is, despite the promises of the unknown journey continues, for the most part, a lot of the story followed beat by beat the original. There was not too many deviations. The deviations were tiny. The Tifa's Doubt, posted by Sephiroth. Dine's Crisis Core moment was like, they changed kind of like his initial suicide death. Tifa going into the live stream early on. That was but at least kind of like the main beats have remained like in place. And it only like really not deviated right at the end with the Aerith thing. Have you found it yet, or is it still...
Google's failed me pretty much.
Man. Sorry for
talking about it.
Yeah, sorry for blue balling you people. But yeah, it was like and then at the end, like the biggest deviation of course had to happen near the end with this whole timeline things that happening, which then when we see that Zack basically survived, even though it was funny that with Zack we got to see 3 different timelines happening at the same time, where near the end, because there was the one time yeah, it was crazy, and it was so sad, like what fate always had for him. Like Zack he wants to save Cloud, so he's gonna go try to find Hojo. What does he find? Hojo's not there, and he has the army, the Shinra army happening. They kill him while he's in the motorcycle. He goes to try to find Biggs, because he wants to, because apparently Biggs, who, yes, somehow Biggs is alive in this weird alternate timeline, or whatever it is.
Or that was the one that they briefly showed when he was just healing in the bed.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what. And then it was like Zack goes to try to like stop Biggs from destroying the Sector 6, the Sector 6 reactor. And he says that no, I can't do it. It's like there's no more Mako. Look, it's like dried up. So it's like it's for good. And then they have kind of like this amazing moment, and then Biggs just gets shot and killed like so unceremoniously. But then then Zack commits suicide there. He was like, yeah, no, it's like, I'm not gonna let them like decide my fate. I'm picking my fate, and then he just drops. And then there's another timeline where he's deciding. It's like, I'm deciding shit.
I was thinking that they didn't have that planned out during Remake, and this just like between Big surviving and Zack's whole situation, I feel like that's almost tacked on, where they were building up something in Remake, and it's like, oh shoot, what is it going to be like when he encounters the rest of the team? And then also, what's Big's going to do now that he's alive? And it's like, nothing. He's gonna walk around, be sad, and then he's gonna die. Or in Zack, he's gonna walk around, he's gonna get exposited to by several characters, and then he's gonna show up for one fight, and then he's gonna be bouncing. Yeah. And that was it. So I was like, golly, it almost feels like it was gonna be better, and that what it was going to be was cooler than what actually happened.
Yeah, I think had they not gone with the multiple timelines and alternate realities that they were going for, it was like I could have imagined just a moment where like just the timeline has shifted and Zack was just alive, and he just ended up being there in Midgard. And I think that's kind of like the game waits too long to tell us exactly what's happening. It's until the very last chapter where Sephiroth basically tells us like every decision that deviates when they're going like through that live stream falling together, it's like that creates a new timeline. And then Zack gets to see the moments that deviated. He gets to see Zack, he gets to see Biggs, he gets to see all of that, and now we know that at the very least, like Zack will come back, where they put him. It's like his words have meaning. It was like, it's like worlds come apart, but what if they can come united again, or something like he mentions something like that. So with Sephiroth clearly saying that what he wants is like for all timelines to kind of merge together. That also, again, with you saying that they want to have their cake and eat it too, is like that is their way to bring back Aerith, if that's the road they want to take. And that's one, and that's one that could be great or could backfire spectacularly. Like doing that. And already with this ending, a lot of people are feeling like some people love it, some people really hate that. Or specifically,
a good amount of people saying that they hate it, and it's some people I don't agree with. Some areas I understand because it feels like certain things were set up and we're going in a kind of different direction, especially now that there's a very palpable dislike or exhaustion of multiverse talk. And this feels like it was created 3 years ago when that was still really popular.
I can imagine it was.
Is just really unfortunate, because it's just, if it had come out sooner, people would have been like, yo, and like all you need is, and then the last one called Reunion again, Sora shows up for the last confrontation, and then it's like, oh, we're feeding into Kingdom Hearts 4 now. I know. But for real, I gave it a 9.3 at the start of this, and then I talked I think I needed to verbally get a lot of my understanding out of like what I liked and what I was a little frustrated, what I'm still unclear on. And at the same time, there were moments in that hit some of the same highs as Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, even higher, I would say. And I would say even higher sometimes, because like I love these characters even more than so many of those in 16, because with 16 it was just Clive and Joshua, like that relationship. There were so many moments here with those characters that was like, again, so many moments of this game that would make this a 10 for me. But this whole ending sequence is what I don't think I can. Maybe a 9, 9.5. I don't know. Like I'm still like mulling because it's like I don't think the end. This is not the kind of game for me that ruined like the 132 hours I spent on the game. Because it's like for me to spend that much time with a game, like engaging in so many of this stuff is like obviously you're gonna love something more than you don't. You know, that's kind of like the nature of a game as monstrously big as this can be if you like engage with everything. But there's still such a spirit to so much of what they did, and like the spectacle and the heart, the music, the fun that all of this had, that even though the ending is complicated with how I feel, it's like it's still like a really phenomenal game. That I will still say this, that now how this game will be seen now, again, kind of like again with the middle chapter syndrome of these things happening, will depend a lot on how the third game goes. But I would say that I am just as excited for that third game more than ever, because now I'm like, I need to, because one, the plot is about to kick over, right? Like regardless of that, like what happened with Aerith or not, is like that was still kind of like the push to like take you through the rest of that story. A lot of people remember a lot of what happens later in that story. Like what people remembered a lot about this middle section of Final Fantasy VII OG was Aerith's death, and that's kind of like what they punctuated this entire game towards that. And obviously it's kind of messy, but there were still some high moments that happened there then that it's still like I had a huge smile as that final hour was happening, like the fights against Bahamut, the Sephiroth Reborn, that they kind of gave it a little bit of like a Kafka becoming like this huge statue kind of thing. It kind of gave me that vibe. It's like, it's very clear that a lot of people that worked on the best Final Fantasy game ever, Final Fantasy VI, had some input here, and some of that work like echoed a lot of that game, even though I still feel like that game is still like the high watermark of this entire franchise in general. I can't wait if they ever do a remake.
Isn't that version of Sephiroth just what he looks like at the end of the game though?
The one with Sephiroth was it became kind of like a half-built angel, and this is kind of like a double statue. So it's kind of like there's a version of how he looks here. So it's like a different. He has the same name, but it's not like that.
I like to imagine like the Oreos, and it's like double stuff Oreos, but it's just Sephiroth's final.
Yeah, yeah. But that fight was really cool. Like seeing him fighting him kind of like at the end of the world, like the moment where like you're playing just a sack alone in his church that's kind of like floating, and he gets that Sephiroth, and then he faces it, and then like grabs the sword, and he does the phrase he said before he died in Crisis Core.
Say the line, Zach. Say the line.
And all like that, like him and Cloud were saying it together, and them like do you get to do the synergy attack with both of them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where they're like high five together. Oh god, it's like Zack's such a great character, and part of me is still glad that he's still alive, and I really hope that they find a way to make him more vital too. If they're gonna keep him around, because like the breadcrumb way that they kept him in, I was expecting they were gonna get more. When they said that they were gonna do one Zack chapter, remember when they teased that back when we read the previews?
Yeah, something like that.
They said that they had a one Zack chapter. It felt like they split that one chapter like throughout that entire game. I would have loved for that to be like more momentous, at least from like when you're playing, even though there was still some interesting story stuff that happened there, because even within his stuff, like we got teased, like when Mordeline tells him like when Cloud wakes up, you have to make sure he protects Aerith because a bad man's coming with like silver hair or something like that. So they were like already seeding that throughout that game. They knew what they were doing, like with this one. And now the world's their oyster, because obviously this was one of the best reviewed games that they've had in the entire series. So it's like a lot of what they did with this game, like a lot of people have really loved, like the new this version of open world Final Fantasy. It feels like this is the time that they nailed open world finally. It's time to see that design and that story that's more momentous. This one got carried by the relationships, but the story of Final Fantasy VII becomes more focused from this point onward. So it's like we got our loyalty quests done. So now we have to see how they how they conclude this. And I'm just happy knowing that they said that it's gonna come soon. Like I feel I'm placing a bet right now. We're gonna be playing this in 2027. And you know why? Anniversary. I feel there's a way that they could like squeak it for an anniversary.
If they, based on what they said, where it's going to take less time than the last one, it took 3 years. 3 years to make this, yeah. They've already done all of that extra work, so yeah, I could see it coming sooner.
Yeah, it all depends right now on because Nomura didn't work at all in this one. This was just Naoki Yamaguchi, who was co-director with him with Remake. He was just kind of like creative director that was kind of like just making sure that everything was like in the line, but moment to moment. This was just directed by Yamaguchi. He had said that he's coming back in force for the third one. Which makes me wonder, because I know he's working on Kingdom Hearts 4. How soon is that now? It's been 2 years since we heard of that one. So, is that happening really soon? Will Square Enix have something to put out next year? We'll see. But the thing is that they have the team. That's the thing. It's not just one person on works. It's like they made the point. 90% of the people that worked on Remake worked on this. That helped them a lot because they consolidated their work. They knew what the strengths of the team were, and they were able to really laser focus. And that helped make this game like come as quick as it is, and shockingly as good as it was, because they knew how to build upon that. A really good example for future developers that want to like Capcom, that is like trying to retain staff by improving their salaries and all that. They know that in order for these games to come out well, you need those people together that know how to make stuff. You don't want to be training new stuff all the time. That's just lost time. So we'll see where it goes. But overall, I really love this game. As of right now, it's my favorite game this year. With the caveat that this same week, Paul, will be playing Dragon's Dogma 2. A game that has been, I can't wait for that one. It's like, I feel like I'm glad I'm done with this one. I was able to finish it right on time, because now we have another big one that's hopefully going to be as good as it looks, like later this week, because we're recording on a Monday. So, and I may post this early, who knows. So, but yeah, that's anything else that we didn't touch upon? I'm trying to think.
I think we have really covered all of the most, at least the most pressing things that have been on my heart and in my head for a little while. We didn't really cover too much of the date. We didn't cover any of the Turks in their situation. Yeah,
the Turks were barely in the game, but it's like Elena was awesome. Reno came in.
Was great.
Yeah, Reno
was weird. I don't know why they kind of wrote him out. I don't remember him getting messed up or anything. Why they kind of set him aside. We didn't even talk about Cisne.
Yeah, Cisne. Yeah, she was like briefly. Yeah, she was briefly there in Gongaga. That was like the biggest, other than Sacklight, the biggest Crisis Core connection, and her doing the proto relics quest.
I didn't get to mention how much I liked Zach's moveset more than Cloud's, and that all of his special moves are literally the limit break moves in Crisis Core. And I was like,
the meteor. Yeah, the meteor.
He's doing the thing.
Yeah.
I was losing my mind in those moments. I love when he takes his sword out, he flips it the right direction first and then comes out. Little thing. And the fact that he punches and kicks with his moves. Okay, I'm stopping.
And what's funny is that if you do the hard version of the challenges for Chatterley that unlock that are level 70 and you do all of them, you unlock Zack and Sephiroth to be able to control them. I don't know if it's just in the challenges.
It feels like something they would only give you in the challenge.
Yes,
because that sounds way too cool.
I know. That's so bad. There was something I was like, wait, you say that? But then I'm like, I can't do them yet because they have to be level 70. There's a trophy to getting characters to level 70, and the only way I see that happening is doing the replay, because I need to replay the game in hard to be able to do this. I have all my characters at level 50. Automatically, the game puts you in New Game Plus with chapter select, so I can just go back to the first chapter and I have everything unlocked. So that'll be interesting, because I've committed almost 150 hours to this thing. I think I'm gonna go for the platinum, even if I go insane doing it.
If you don't, you've wasted your time.
I know. Yeah, that's kind of how it feels. And
I think that's the heart of your problem with having to just finish everything completely.
Yeah, but it's like when I love doing that for games I really love. So I was like, this is one of those games. If it wasn't, I was like, oh yeah, because I think I want a platinum remake too. That's kind of what I found funny, is like, when I replayed Remake, I put 37 hours into it, doing all the side quests and all of that. By the time I was done with Remake, I was done. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. Time to move to other stuff while we wait for Rebirth. I'm 150 hours and I want to keep playing it. That to me tells me that Rebirth is a better game, because there's so much about it that, even though I feel like from a plot perspective, Remake is better, because it actually tells a more complete beginning, middle, end story because of where it's segmented, even though they had to like fluff it up a few times just to justify the full game. At least for those that really care too much about plot. I'm looking at you, Richard Hogue. It's like Remake definitely will work better for that kind of people that
Yeah.
Just character-driven stuff is not enough for them. And I learned that from Hope, that he thinks Mass Effect 2 is the worst Mass Effect. Where everyone talked about that. Like, obviously, like Empire Strikes Back is his, he ranks it third out of like the Star Wars original trilogy. So it's like, I know like where he leans. So it makes perfect sense for me why Rebirth is not clicking for that. And I heard that like last time because I keep a DM with him. Because he also is part of the Bitcast from Season Game where I do my reviews. So he likes reading my reviews on that. So I kind of sometimes have back and forth with him. That right now he's doing the Kid G stuff, which is kind of like that elf with like the boxing gloves thing, the Cactus quest. I was like, don't do that right now because you're going to get soft locked. Like, it's the one that you can't complete right now. That opens until chapter 12, just mainline. Because knowing he hasn't gotten to Gongaga yet. The last thing he saw, was
he sounds like somebody who hates all of the fact that he feels obligated to keep playing all of the side stuff.
Yeah.
I've been there though.
Yes.
Where you feel like you have to and you're being shamed if you don't. Especially Remake was bad about that.
Yeah.
Because it was like you had the one opportunity to do that side thing right then. If you didn't feel like it, F you, go do it. If you don't, we're gonna
you're not gonna be able to. We're not gonna let you do it. Yeah,
it's just not a good sign. Anyway,
but
I think overall we've kind of talked about everything we really need to. I am at
I'll say
levels of hype.
Yeah, the Proto Relic quest, super cool at the end, also incredibly hard. That's the Gilgamesh. That's Gilgamesh, and Proto Relic is the thing that you find the most variety doing Chatterley's side activities, because Chatterley provides this game's the structure. That's what's so funny. It's like this game is at its core, it feels like a Ubisoft game, but it's like has an in-universe like structure to it that makes sense. That's why like the structure for this game works for me more than trying to 100% a recent Ubisoft game, because the structure just exists just because it's a Ubisoft game instead of being part of the world where you're like building Chatterley's database, and then the ending of all of that, like he's like. Were like just a spoiler, because it's Spoilercast. Like when you finish that, like you get teleported to his virtual room, and he shows you the Kingdom Hearts wall, kind of like it just shows you like pictures of everything, and it tells you like he has a feeling that the world's about to end, and he wants to like gather everything from the previous world in case something happens, so that there's like a reference for like the future. So it's like it's so funny that that everything that you do in the game has some purpose, even if all the activities may be repetitive, especially by the time you arrive to Gongaga. Gongaga is the worst map to 100%. Why? Because of the damn mushrooms. And you say, because you need to like, okay, this mushroom will jump me. Okay, is that the place where I needed to go? Crap, no, is that the place I need to go is lower. I have to try to find a way to. I have to surf down. Yeah. Oh.
Gungaga's whole jungle thing. I loved it at first as I was running through it, but finding anything in there was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I think that's the last thing I have to say.
Yeah, Gongaga's great. As the story that happens in Gongaga is great. That's the Aerith and Zack look at each other. I mean, Aerith and Tifa look at each other before looking at a Cloud angry over him suggesting to screw over Zack or something like that. That's where the whole thing at their reactor happens. The Tifa going in. It's like there's a lot of I would say plot momentum kicks in Gongaga and doesn't let off. Cosmo Canyon is like solidifies the relationship with so many characters there. Like that, Aerith had the amazing speech at the bonfire there. That's where Red 13 will learn, kind of like we have mentioned, is like his big twist is that his voice is not the edgy voice. He's a kid. He just pretends to be like this like edgy old animal, so that people kind of like take him seriously. But no, he's like a really overzealous puppy, a 16-year-old puppy, even though he's 41. Which makes that context makes it even funnier of him as a 16-year-old complimenting Aerith and Tifa at Costa del Sol when they're like in their.
Yep. Like you knew he was like, holy crap, I know, bro.
Yeah, so it's like being like, oh yeah, he's a horny teenager, like. So yeah, and that whole Costa del Sol thing, it's so funny how like that whole clip of Tifa coming in and leaning in is just legendary meme fodder now.
They absolutely knew what they were trying to do with that, and it's hilarious.
Oh yeah, and that's when Yuffie joins the party, when she helps with the boss fight against Hojo. It's like, even in the tiny moments, there's always great moments in this game that I can't wait to replay it in hard. I want to see, and now I'm going to be able to just mainline. I want to see how it feels like just going from moment to moment and how I feel about it. Yeah, Rebirth to me was like super great. And complications aside for the ending that prevents me from giving this like a clean 10, but it feels like a 10 for me. It's like, I loved it, and I'm so sad that we're done with Final Fantasy games until we have 2 DLCs coming, for one for 16 and one for 14. This could be the year where we like dive in hard for 14, because I've heard many people tell me Heavensward, Stormfront, Shadowbringers, and Walker are all like top tier, like best Final Fantasy content like ever.
It's gonna be
Yes,
a lot to digest with everything going on. But I've heard so many good things that maybe this is the year that we finally do it.
Maybe during your summer where you're like in dad hours, taking care of that. I
don't know if playing an MMO for several more hours is going to be the option for me, but we're gonna find out.
Yeah, we'll definitely find out about that. But yeah, it's like I can't think of anything else that I can say about Rebirth right now, other than it's like really excellent game that has a very complicated final sequence that I love and don't like at the same time. So. And
it's the Last Jedi of Final Fantasy, truly.
Yeah, I feel there's more good here than there was in Last Jedi.
Yeah, far more. I think that's what I said when I sent it to you. But I feel like the similarity is just enough there that it has to be said.
Yeah, it's like it definitely subversive. It's like it's subversive. The problem with the Last Jedi was that it was subversive and felt like the story ended there when there was still a lot more chapters. Here,
unfortunately, in hindsight, it kind of did.
Yes. That would have still been a much better ending, regardless of what it is, than what we got with Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, this definitely kind of like it subverts a very clear, very pivotal moment of the original game that gives it more grandeur, but misses the clean elegance of the the power of that moment originally. So that's kind of like something that a lot of people are gonna struggle with. But I know, like I saw a lot of people that. They really were like, I saw there was a streamer called Runeby. She was streaming it and she was in tears playing through that entire sequence. Like, because I know the overwhelming feeling. I'm gonna link that song. Like, I was listening before it started. It's like the swelling moment. That's when it switches from Jenova's theme to like an epic version of Aerith's song. Is like you're not ready for like the emotions that. Is that
the one that you shared?
Yes.
Earlier.
Yeah, the one that starts kind of like at the 6 minute time that starts with like. Quiet Aerith transitions to Jenova, and then that's kind of like when the team is kind of like going through the mist to start the fight, and then when the fight starts is when the Aerith theme like clicks in, and it plays at the very end of the credits. Also, I was listening to them again. I was like, gosh, it's like this is Nobuo Uematsu who created the original music. This is like Final Fantasy music is always gonna be the secret sauce, the secret ingredient that adds the power to the series. That's what helped 16. That still helped here. That I'll always remember that opera scene for this one. What a beautiful, beautiful moment. Before we leave, Paul, this time I'm going to read the releases for the week of Sunday the 24th to Saturday the 30th. That's the end of March. So we got Acolyte of the Altar comes to PC on March 25th. Bulwark Falconeer Chronicles comes to PS5, Series X, and PC on March 26th. Grandia HD Collection. Grandia is like a really popular like RPG from like the aughts. Comes to PS4 and Xbox One on March 26th. Planet Zoo Console Edition comes to PS5, Series X, and S on March 26th. South Park Snow Day comes to PS5, Series X, and S, Switch, and PC. I already played it. You can infer how I felt about it based on my tone. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective comes to Android on March 28th. Open Roads comes to PS5, Series X, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on March 28th. Outward comes to Switch on March 28th. Pepper Grinder comes to Switch and PC on March 28th. And Madison comes to PSVR 2 on March 29th. Which, by the way, like you saw the story poster, right, about the PSVR 2.
Yeah, oh my god.
That's wild. That would be like, okay, we're not gonna produce anymore because we have so much in stock. We're not like, so it's like that thing is
heartbreaking.
Yes, heartbreaking because I heard a lot of people say that PSVR 2 is really good as a tech.
It really improved a lot.
Yeah, and it sucks that Sony always with Sony put out amazing tech hardware.
And they don't care for it.
And they don't care for it to support it with their game, like because they're always kind of like, yeah, we're gonna put this amazing hardware. But if it's not the main PlayStation where we have our first party, we hope the third party support it. No, it's like you have to support it. If you don't support it, others are not going to. So, and they always have to like fall into that. They always step on that rake, and that's sad for PSVR 2. Because now it's like, what does it say about VR? Like you're giving the Zuckerberg's gonna run foul with that one because he figured it out with that one. So Paul, that ends this week's episode of the X-Bot and Spoilercast. I can't imagine another story-based game that we just forecast for this year, like that's important. I can't think of one. So
unless like Dragon's Dogma really surprises us with its powerful story, or like
it's not
Sandland.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's nothing that's really apparent that's going to really crush us out of this. So let's enjoy the high while it lasts.
Oh yes, because we're about to start the lows based on just the list that I just read. It's like, yes, we're slowly like now it's like the calm down begins for this year. And but hey, at least we get Sandland, Tales of Sincero Cow, and Stellar Blade with his hard mode, and not April 26th. Oh god, that's amazing.
Nothing else to say on that. No notes.
Yeah, and on that note, Paul, where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I post every once in a while a gameplay video when I take the time to download it to my phone and then upload it to X's terrible app software. Or I post sketches of things. That is pretty much all I do right now. Where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter /X at @A_Dorsegovia. They can find me on Instagram at AlejandroSegovia93, also Threads. And they can find my written content at seasongaming.com currently, and some old stuff that I wrote over at thecriticalcorner.com. They can read my reviews for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, and Skull and Bones. Right now, that's always been my 3 reviews this year. I'm about to write my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth review. It's gonna go out sometime this week. Don't know when, because when I submit, they don't immediately put it out. So because I have to edit it and stuff. I might do a video review. Who knows? So we might try, but it's because it came in late. So yeah, and they've kind of.
You've been friends with Travis. He can give you the lowdown on how the video IGN reviews go.
No, they do video reviews for literally every review they do. Like that's part of their skill, and we usually don't do that at Season Gaming, and that's the audience. That's kind of like the thing. It's like Season Audience has a small but very fervent reader group. I know Ains has been sharing us some of the stats. So there's a lot of people do read that site, so it's not for nothing. But YouTube presence is definitely lower there, and also because of the commitment. But we have a new video editor, so the thing is that I have to extract. I'm gonna write my review, and then I want to see if I can put that, and then see. I have chapter select unlocked now. I can go specifically. I can.
So easy to find all that. Like you could go back. When you mentioned you had a separate save, I was like, you could literally go into chapter 14. With that, you can redo. Just don't have any side quests done, but you already finished those. It keeps all of the progress of everything else. You can change even you can remove Zach's interlude segments from replaying it. You can change a lot of those extra details. I think
there's a lot of customization that you can do with replaying that game. That's really great. So I hope they do DLC. I hope they do DLC. But if they that's my thing. They have not said. They also didn't tease that they were gonna do DLC for remake, and then suddenly they did an intermission, and that's why they did Yuffie. They were able to do her kit through Yuffie and then just transplant her to her game. I kind of was thinking of that because it's imagine you could do something with Vincent. That's how they do it. They do a Vincent interlude, and
Vincent and Sid buddy cop.
Yeah, so that would be that would be a way, because there's just Cerberus stuff in intermission. So that's what I'm like. And that's a Vincent thing.
Actually.
But they had also said that they started development of Rebirth after they were done with intermission. So it's if it's the same team doing it, I would rather them just get to the other game. Especially where we're.
I don't know. If it means that I get both, maybe I will take it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just wanted by 2027. I would love for them to nail it, to be in the 40-year anniversary of the original game. We have completed the compilation. Paul, this was fun. I love doing just deep dive gaming discussions. Those are always fun. No news, especially with how depressing news can be sometimes. You missed Akira Toriyama's trivia last week. So
I did, and part of me is kind of glad that I missed it, just for the sake of I don't know if I could have handled it.
Yeah, I know it was
rough.
Yeah, I had to do that solo. But yeah, last last episode was a solo episode. So now we end, and now we go through the unknown journey continues for gaming this year. Now we're done. Our most anticipated game is done. So anyone else hope and anyone else, I hope that you listened to this episode. I hope you enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Tell us what you liked, or maybe you didn't like. You can leave it in the comments there. It's I know this is a very hot button topic game right now, so it's obviously we're getting another hot button topic game coming soon. Can't wait to start downloading it, Paul. And but until then, keep enjoying whatever you're playing. Hopefully you enjoyed and appreciate what Rebirth did, or maybe you didn't, but who knows. But until then, enjoy the rest of this month. Hopefully daylight savings is not kicking your ass and you already got used to the extra hour. And until then,
press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.